The wind coming off the wolfswood that dawn carried a promise of autumn long before the maester's calendar would allow it. A chill that slipped beneath furs and cooled the stone of Winterfell's towers to a damp gray. Beneath the first light, Eddard Stark stood alone upon the battlements above the eastern gatehouse, listening to the near-silent rustle of leaves and the distant bark of dogs in the kennels. He had slept poorly, visions of dead dire wolves and crimson-eyed kings haunting the thin spaces between wakefulness and sleep, but a Stark did not complain of dreams. He wrapped his cloak tighter, breathing the cold air until the drumming inside his chest eased into something like calm. Behind him, the castle stirred awake. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer rang from Micken's forge, followed by the sharper echo of steel meeting steel as practice blades crossed in the yard. Somewhere deeper in the keep, a stable boy whistled off-key, and Hullen's rasping voice cursed a milk mare that would not stand to be saddled. All the familiar sounds of home, yet they could no longer soothe him. Everything had begun to tilt the moment Jon Arryn died. The raven had carried more than sorrow northward. It had carried a change in the rhythm of the realm itself, one that shivered through Ned's bones as tangibly as the wind. He heard soft footsteps and did not need to turn to know who approached. Cailin's scent of cedar and rosewater preceded her, a memory of Riverrun gardens grafted to Winterfell's harsher climb. She slipped her arm around his, gazing east where the sky warmed from ash to blush. "You should rest," she murmured. "Robert will want your strength this day." "Robert will want ale and merriment," Ned said, though there was no mirth in the words. "And I will give him both. But strength I cannot promise. Not yet." Caitlin's hand tightened. "It has been 9 years since you last stood together. Whatever burdens you feel, share them. The gods did not craft men to shoulder the world alone." He looked at her then, the lines of worry etched beside her mouth, the faint bruises beneath her eyes from nights spent pacing with candle and prayer. "I will try," he said. "For you. For our children." A horn sounded from beyond the walls, 3 sharp blasts, the signal for the arrival of honored guests. Ned breathed once, deeply, and let the chill sink to his marrow. It seems the gods have ended our respite. By mid-morning, Winterfell's courtyard thrummed with color and noise. The royal procession spilled through the gate like a river of bright banners. The crowned stag of Baratheon, the golden lion of Lannister, and smaller heraldry for Storm's End retainers, Tyrell emissaries, even a few sworn to House Tully who had ridden north as escort. Snow yet clung to shaded crevices, but the leather and lacquer pageantry made it seem as though summer itself had marched up the King's Road. Robert Baratheon dismounted in a huff of labored breath, armor straining against the girth Ned scarcely recognized. Yet the eyes were the same, a stormy blue alive with reckless joy as they found Ned standing at the foot of the steps. "Ned!" the king roared, voice rolling across stone and straw. "Your Grace," Eddard replied, offering a half-bow before Robert crushed him in a bear's embrace that drove air from lungs and grief from memory, if only for a heartbeat. "My old friend," Robert whispered against his ear, sudden softness in the hulking frame, then louder. "Your ale had best be cold, Stark, or I'll have your head before I name you hand." Laughter rippled through the courtyard. Only later would Ned realize Cersei Lannister did not laugh. Her green eyes skimmed the scene like a cat considering which sparrow to devour first. She moved with feline grace across muddy ground unstained upon her boots, stopping before Cailin with a polite curtsy that held no warmth. "Lady Stark," she said, lip curving, "the north is quaint." "Your Grace," Cailin replied, voice smooth and measured as still water. "We are honored by your presence." Ned watched the exchange, sensing frost beneath the pleasantries. Beside the queen stood her twin, Ser Jaime, golden hair glinting even in the weak northern sun. Armor polished, smile sharpened. Behind them, a pale boy of 12 helped a younger brother from his pony. Joffrey's sneer at the stable boy's dirt-stained face did not go unnoticed. The littlest Lannister, Tyrion, regarded everything with an assessing tilt of his head and eyes too clever by half. Sansa and Arya curtsied with studied grace, though Arya's interest drifted to the masked knights unpacking lances. Bran perched atop a wooden rail, jaw hanging open at the sight of Jaime's gilded armor. Rickon hid behind Rob's leg, wide-eyed at the enormous royal direwolf gift, though it was only Robert's hunting pack, not direwolves at all. Introductions, bows, and 100 minor rituals consumed the morning until at last Ned escorted the royal family into the great hall for a midday feast. Roasted boar and honeyed partridge, wheels of cheese, trenchers filled with onion and barley stew. A small foretaste of the welcoming feast planned for nightfall. Robert drank horn after horn, cheeks flushing. Cersei sipped watered wine, polite smile never reaching her eyes. Tyrion asked impertinent questions about the wall's height, the thickness of its ice, and whether giants still roamed the haunted forest. Sansa answered in sing-song courtesy until Arya kicked her beneath the table. It might have been an ordinary reunion of two houses bound by war and friendship, had Ned not seen the Queen's gaze linger upon her brother's lips when he bent to whisper some jest. That evening, as torches painted amber stripes along the gallery, Ned's peace cracked. He had retreated to the quiet of the Godswood, chasing solitude beneath the ancient weirwood whose face bled red sap from carved eyes. But footsteps found him there as well, measured and soft. Footsteps belonging to Jon Snow, his bastard, cheeks flushed from training with Robb and the princes. "Father," Jon began, uncertainty hovering between syllables like mist. "I did not mean to disturb." "You never disturb me, Jon." Ned motioned him closer. Beneath the heart tree the air smelled of damp earth and the faint metallic tang of the pool. "Walk with me." They circled the pond in silence until Jon spoke. "The Queen's men laugh at my cloak. They say it marks me half a boy and half a wolf." His voice held no self-pity, only quiet acceptance. "Ser Jaime offered to teach me refinement, should I wish to rise above my station." Ned's jaw tightened. "You are no lion's protege. Remember that." "I told him I would honor my father's name." Jon glanced sidelong. "I hope I have not shamed you." Pride swelled, an ache and blessing. "You could not, even if you tried." Ned laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. "But be wary of lions who smile too quickly." Jon smiled, tension easing. "I am to spar with Prince Joffrey tomorrow. Robb says the prince favors blunted longswords. I prefer the smaller blade. Hold your own ground. Do not let him dictate the fight. Joffrey fights to be seen. You fight to endure." Ned paused, considering whether to share darker thoughts, of swirling rumors and silent conspiracies, but held them. Jon carried burdens enough. When the boy departed, Ned knelt before the weirwood, words of supplication forming soundlessly. He begged the old gods for guidance. For Bran's restless climbing, for Arya's wild heart, for Sansa's dreams of southern courts, for Robb's dawning understanding of duty, for Jon's shadowed path, for Cailin's fears and his own. Above, red leaves whispered secrets too ancient for men, but Ned listened all the same. He rose when the moon rode high, silver light spilling upon dark water, and found Maester Luwin waiting beside the moss-covered arch Lord Stark. The Maester said, owl-eyed in lamplight, "A raven arrived from King's Landing. It bears Lady Erin's seal." Ned's heart skipped. At Luwin's solar, candles guttered in the cold. He broke the wax, unrolled the vellum. Lisa's hand trembled across the lines. "The king is blind. The queen's brothers twist his court into corruption. Jon was murdered for asking questions. The Lannisters are serpents. Their golden coils tighten about the throne. Trust no one. Protect your children." A chill deeper than northern winter settled through Ned's bones. Jon Arryn murdered. Murdered for what? He reread until the words blurred. "Maester," he said at last, voice ragged, "burn this, and bring me Ser Rodrik." Rodrik Castle, white whiskers bristling like frost upon his cheeks, listened as Ned shared the letter's contents. "If this be true," Rodrik said, fingers drumming the hilt of his sword, "then the queen's own kin conspire to shield some foul secret. Secrets breed treason. Treason that has already killed one hand of the king," Ned murmured, "and may soon claim another." Rodrik spoke plainly, as was his habit. "You must discover what Arryn uncovered, or refuse the position Robert is sure to offer." Ned thought of Robert's laughter. the friendship of boyhood forged on the anvil of rebellion. To refuse would wound the man who called him brother. Yet to accept with eyes shut would endanger house and realm alike. There had to be a path that preserved both honor and safety. He found it before dawn, a truth hidden, perhaps, in plain sight. The next day dawned bright, the sky a hammered shield of pale blue. At Ned's insistence, the royal family joined the Starks for a hunt in the Wolfswood rather than the planned hawking near the King's Road. A chance for the children to see the North's beauty, he told Robert, though the North's beauty had teeth and claws that Southern eyes often misjudged. Robert relished the prospect, commanding Baratheon hounds and Lannister guards into disordered columns that rattled from the gate. Ned rode beside the king, listening to boasts of the largest boar ever seen in the Stormlands. Yet Ned's gaze rarely left Cersei and Jaime, who followed at a distance, speaking together with heads bent too close. By mid-morning the party split. Robert, Renly, Theon Greyjoy, and most of the hunters chased fresh tracks deeper into shadowed groves. Ned guided a smaller group, Cersei, Jaime, Tyrion, and Ser Barristan Selmy, toward a glade where a reflecting pool mirrored sky. Bran and Arya rode shaggy mountain ponies behind, Bran's delight at each squirrel's leap in stark contrast to Arya's restless grip on her reins. Near the pool, Ned dismounted. "Your Grace," he said to Cersei, gesturing toward the water. "A place of peace. I hoped you might enjoy it." Cersei's smile flickered. Unexpected courtesy from northern austerity. "Courtesy is never unexpected in honorable company," Ned answered. Jaime's gaze sharpened at the subtle barb. Tyrion wandered to the pool's edge, fascination gleaming. "Do you know," he said lightly, "it is said that water remembers every face it has ever reflected, if only one could ask?" "A poetic notion," Ned replied. He waited until the guards drifted out of earshot, until only rippling leaves spoke above the hush. Then he turned to Cersei. "I knew a man once who sought to protect his family at any cost. In so doing, he condemned tens of thousands to die. A harsh lesson. Secrets can be more lethal than swords." Cersei's eyes narrowed to slits of emerald. "What lesson do you preach, Lord Stark?" Ned drew breath. "Jon Arryn named your children sweet babes, innocent of their parents' sins. He died soon after." He felt Bran's curious gaze burning into his back. Arya's too. Jaime's hand settled on his hilt. "Careful, Stark. Does caution frighten you?" Ned asked coldly. "Or truth?" He faced Cersei. "Your son's hair is gold, yet Baratheon seed runs black. Your twins share the same golden crown. Not Baratheon traits, Lannister. You know it. Jon Arryn knew it. How many more must see before the realm is torn apart?" Silence crashed heavier than steel. Cersei did not blink. "You presume much from a twist of hair," she said, voice soft as falling snow, deadly as winter. "Tread carefully." "I tread with honor." Ned's words emerged stronger than he felt. "Tell the king the truth before others force it upon him. If you love your children." "Love," she laughed, brittle. "A mother's love is claws and flame, Stark. I will burn cities to ash for them. Do not threaten what I cherish more than life." "I threaten nothing," he said. "I warn. Robert will learn, either from your lips or another's. Let it be yours. Spare them horror." Jaime moved like lightning, blade half-drawn before Ser Barristan's gauntlet closed upon his wrist. "Not in the king's peace," Selmy said. Jaime met his eyes, measuring, then sheathed steel. Cersei stepped close, eyes green fire. "You speak of horror, yet do not see your own. Keep silent, Lord of Snow and Sorrow, or the next Raven South will carry more than warnings." Ned bowed his head, not in submission but in sorrow. "So be it." He turned on his heel, signaling Bran and Arya to follow. Behind him, the Queen's fury crackled like ice underfoot. The die was cast. Word of the confrontation spread faster than ravens, though none could say who first whispered. Courtiers spoke of odd tension around Queen Cersei, of the Kingslayer's brooding watchfulness, of Lord Stark's late-night council with Maester Luwin and Ser Roderick. Robert, blind with mead and nostalgia, noticed nothing. 2 evenings later, resolve hardened to steel. Ned summoned Cersei to the solar above Winterfell's library, neutral ground, away from the Godswood's haunting stillness. Snow churned outside, fine as sifted flour, hissing against shutters. Cailin waited within, Lady Stark rather than wife, the weirwood pin at her collar gleaming with candle reflections. Ser Barristan stood sentinel by the hearth, old eyes weary. Ned had invited him for honor's witness. Cersei arrived in a cloud of Lannister crimson, Jaime close behind until Ser Barristan barred the threshold. "A family matter," Selmy said, voice apologetic yet firm. Jaime's jaw worked, but he remained outside. Within, Ned unrolled a parchment. Lineage tables of House Baratheon, stretching back before Aegon's conquest. Each lord born dark-haired save one distant grandmother. He laid beside it a more recent ledger. Robert's bastards in the Stormlands and Crownlands, acknowledged by coin if not by law, all black of hair. "You asked for proof," Ned said softly. "I bring proof, not for the realm but for you." Cersei's gaze flicked across the records, unreadable. Ink on parchment. "And the living example stands outside this very room," Cailin said, voice cutting. "Look upon Prince Joffrey and see Jaime's twin." Cersei's hand trembled, only for an instant, then stilled. "What do you propose?" "Flee." Ned's answer astonished even himself. "Take your children west to Casterly Rock by night and sail for Essos before dawn. Robert will blame me for letting you escape, but he will not hunt children across the narrow sea. Go, and the realm avoids war." Silence stretched. Candle flame bent under a draft, casting warped shadows across shelves of crumbling tomes. Cersei's lips parted. "Mercy from a Stark. Perhaps the tales of northern honor were not lies." "I pray you accept," Ned said. "For their sake." Cersei stepped closer, so near he smelled the sharp citrus of her perfume. "My children are no stain to be hidden. They are heirs born of love. Your mercy is weakness. Your honor will kill you." She turned, skirts whispering, and swept from the room. When the door slammed, Ser Barristan exhaled. "You have set kindling to dry tinder, my lord." Ned looked to Cailin. Fear glimmered behind her steady eyes. He whispered, "May the gods forgive me if I've doomed us all." That night Ned could not sleep. He paced the parapets until the moon fell behind clouds, then descended to the crypts seeking solace among stone kings. The chill down there was different, ancient, reverent, smelling of dust and marble and memory. He knelt at Lyanna's tomb, brushed fingers across granite carved in her likeness, and wondered if promises once made now guided his steps toward ruin or redemption. Above ground, Winterfell stirred into turmoil. At first light, a stable boy found 3 Lannister guards slain near the stables, throats cut. Cersei and the children were gone. Jaime and a column of red-cloaked riders galloped from the castle before Ned could order pursuit, vanishing south along the King's Road. Robert, still abed with wine, woke to chaos. His fury shook rafters when Ned told him the truth, each word peeling layers from their friendship. Yet the king listened, every denial crumbling beneath Ned's evidence. The ledgers, Maester Pycelle's records of royal births, the observation any half-drunk lord could make. Gold where there should be ebony. Robert roared, smashed goblets, swore vengeance upon the Lannisters. Then grief overtook rage, betrayal stung worse than sword wounds. "My children," he whispered, voice cracked. "Bastards, all." Pain twisted his broad features until Ned barely recognized the warrior he had followed through rebellion. But Robert was still Robert. By dusk, he emerged clad in black and gold plate, grim determination replacing sorrow. "They will answer," he vowed. "For Aaron, for this mockery, for every lie spun in my own bed." War clouds gathered, thick and dark, above a realm unprepared. News traveled on raven wings. At King's Landing, Littlefinger counted coppers and noticed coin flows shifting. Varys listened in black cells to whispers of Western fleets provisioning. Renly weighed allegiance and saw crown upon his brow. Tywin Lannister, at Casterly Rock, read his daughter's coded plea and summoned bannermen. "A lion does not flee," he said. "A lion strikes." Armies rose. Surra's gold-bought swords from Old Oak to Lannisport. The golden tooth sharpened spears. In the north, Ned moved faster. He dispatched ravens to White Harbor, Carhold, Bear Island. Call the banners. Yet his heart ached. He had not wanted this war. He wrote to Stannis on Dragonstone, urging him to claim what law said was his Robert's throne, knowing Stannis would bring righteous wrath against bastardy. But Stannis was slow as ice to melt and as unbending. Cailin counseled sending the children east to Riverrun. Ned refused. Winterfell was safer than the Riverlands, for now. Robb stood tall in new-forged mail, eager to prove manhood. Jon watched with envy, bound by bastardy to other roads. They met the royal host south of Moat Cailin, where the swamp narrowed the causeway. Robert commanded 3,000 loyal men, bolstered by Stark spears. Against them marched 10,000 Lannister troops under Jaime's command, the lion's banners bright amid reeds and bog water. Yet battle did not come that day. Jaime parleyed under truce, meeting Ned between forces beneath a sky of iron gray. "You could have kept silent," the Kingslayer said, eyes gleaming like polished steel. "Kept your children safe, and left the realm to rot," Ned answered. "I choose truth. Truth is a blade with no hilt." Jaime smiled ruefully. "It will cut you first." He offered terms: withdraw, surrender Robert, allow Cersei safe return. Nonsense dressed as mercy.
Ned declined.
They parted without handshake, aware next meeting would be upon mud slick with blood. The bog consumed men as eagerly as swords. Archers loosed flaming arrows that fizzed upon damp shields. Pikes slipped, horses broke legs in hidden pools. Yet northern discipline held. When the first Lannister charge foundered amid suckling mud, Stark spearmen surged, hacking, thrusting, their battle cry a primal howl.
Ned fukt nu.
A.R. Robert, every swing of the king's warhammer crushing mail, bone and spirit. Robert seemed reborn, battle his true altar. "For Lyanna," he bellowed, and history bent as it had once before at the Trident. Across the field, Jaime's golden armor flashed, carving paths through chaos toward Ned. Destiny drew former comrades, two men bound by honor in opposite fashion. They met atop a low ridge where fern fronds dripped blood. Jaime's long sword hissed. Ned's own met it, steel ringing like winter stars colliding. They traded blows swift and terrible. Jaime's grace matched Ned's grim resolve. A parry, a feint, a slip of footing nearly cost Ned his jaw, but he caught the riposte on the edge of his blade, sparks flying. Around them battle raged, a maelstrom of screams, the stench of gore, the squelch of mire. "Think on your daughters," Jaime murmured mid-clash. "Yield, live. My daughters would spit on such surrender." Ned forced him back. He saw doubt flicker in Jaime's eyes. Doubt or perhaps regret, but there was no room for mercy. A Northman's axe struck Jaime's pauldron, staggering him. Ned's pommel-smashed visor, dazing. He kicked the Kingslayer to his knees, blade poised. Then Ser Barristan stepped between them, shield raised. "Enough!" His voice cut through death's roar. "Kingslaying has bred enough ghosts. Spare each other."
Ned froze.
Jaime's gauntlet hand pressed to cracked helm, blood trickling. For heartbeat upon heartbeat, the future teetered. A horn sounded thrice, baritone and deep, from the Lannister rear. Golden lions fell back in disciplined retreat, carrying wounded and pride alike. Northmen gave chase until Robert's command halted them. Exhaustion and swamp claimed further lives than blades would have. Ned lowered his sword. Jaime met his gaze. In that moment, hatred tempered to something like respect, or perhaps resignation. Night cloaked the aftermath. Fires dotted the marsh like fallen stars. Medics waded through reeds retrieving the living while crows claimed the rest. Ned walked among both, offering waterskins, words of comfort, silent prayer. Robert sat alone upon a stump, hammer across his knees, staring at distant flames.
Ned approached.
Neither spoke. The friendship, once unbreakable, now hung frayed but present. At last Robert whispered, "Will any of it matter? I win wars and lose peace. We slay those who challenge us, yet betrayals grow anew." Ned crouched, meeting his gaze. "Peace is not a trophy. It is a garden needing constant tending. We failed till we'd rot before fruit spoiled." The king snorted softly. Wisdom from a man raised on snow and hardship. He looked east where dawn promised pale hope. "Will the realm survive us, Ned? If we strive every day as if it might not," Ned said. "Perhaps it will." Robert nodded, tears glistening unshed. "I will name you protector until Stannis arrives to claim what law demands. Guide me, old friend, for I am lost." Ned clasped his shoulder. "We will find the path together." Word of the battle at Moat Cailin spread south, carried by survivors and spies. King's Landing trembled. Gold cloaks murmured allegiance to whichever side might feed them. Renly fled the capital by night, heading for Highgarden and the reach of Mace Tyrell's flowered spears. The small folk whispered of a lioness in exile gathering Sellsword companies in Pentos. Across the narrow sea, Cersei negotiated with Magister Illyrio, trading Lannister gold for Braavosi ships and Cohoric steel. Joffrey's rage boiled at the indignity. Myrcella wept for home. Tommen clutched a lion plush and asked when father would forgive mother. Cersei promised crowns of purest gold, kingdoms won back in fire and blood. Back in the north, Ned faced new perils. Tywin's armies massed at the Trident. Littlefinger proposed alliances born of coin and wedlock. Sansa to Joffrey's replacement, perhaps, should Stannis falter. Varys delivered cryptic warnings about dragons stirring in the east. Every raven bore omens. Amid plotting, Bran climbed once more, higher than ever, to a tower half-ruined by age. He gazed across battlements, dreaming of knights and daring deeds, unknowing that destiny's course had shifted because a queen fled rather than risk his gaze. He would never fall. So much else already had. As autumn's first hard frost glimmered across the north, Ned convened his bannermen beneath Winterfell's great hall. Mormont, Karstark, Glover, Umber, voices loud as thunder, pledging swords to king and truth. Yet Ned spoke not of conquest but of vigilance. "The realm teeters," he told them. "We hold the line. We guard our people. We remember that a king's justice begins with a lord's honor." Outside, Jon Snow watched from shadows, Ghost's red eyes reflecting torchlight. He yearned to ride south, to stand beside Robb in wars to come. But he remembered his father's words, "The wall needs good men." In the silence of his chambers, he traced the black cloth of his night's watch cloak, decision weighing heavier than chainmail. Elsewhere, roots of rebellion spread in unexpected soil. In the Riverlands, Catelyn rode to Riverrun seeking her father's counsel, but found Edmure rash with talk of glory and Hoster racked by fever. She nursed her sire, fearing for hearths far beyond. In the Stormlands, Stannis drafted proclamations naming himself rightful heir, denouncing Joffrey as bastard, Renly as usurper. Few answered, yet his cold resolve kindled embers. The Game of Thrones had begun anew, pieces scattered by a single truth spoken in Winterfell's Godswood. Deep winter still lay months away, but the north felt its breath. Snowflakes drifted in lazy spirals as Ned stood upon Winterfell's wall once more. Below, children laughed. Arya chasing Bran with a wooden sword, Rickon toddling behind Shaggy Dog. For a heartbeat peace seemed possible. But ravens waited, talons scratching at stony sills, bearing scrolls sealed with lions, roses, fiery hearts, krakens. Ned opened each, eyes reading doom and duty. The realm might survive if honor did not break first under weight of crowns. He breathed the cold, steadying. The old gods had granted him the courage to speak. Now they must grant him the strength to endure the storm his words had summoned. And somewhere far to the south, Cersei Lannister watched Braavosi sailors raise crimson sails emblazoned with a golden lion. She smiled, thinking of Winterfell and the man who dared threaten her children. In her hand she held a dagger with a wolf's head pommel, stolen from Robert's own armory. A promise not of mercy, but of vengeance yet to come. The first snows would soon blanket the King's Road. Travelers would whisper of kings at war, of a hand who stood against corruption, of a queen's flight and a realm poised upon knife edge. Yet within Winterfell's walls the heart tree still bled red sap, ancient and patient, watching seasons turn. Beneath its gaze, Eddard Stark squared his shoulders and walked forward into uncertainty, guided by honor, burdened by love, and armed with the truth that had already reshaped a kingdom. The story had only just begun, and the long night of consequence stretched ahead, hour upon hour, chapter upon chapter, until the last ember of vengeance met the first light of justice in a world forever changed by the courage of one northern lord who dared to expose a queen's secret at Winterfell. The raven that brought dawn to Winterfell that morning had wings the color of midnight oil and a harsh cry that scraped the chill air like flint over steel, rousing those who had slept only by exhaustion's mercy. Ned Stark was among the first to learn of its arrival, summoned by a bleary-eyed Maester Luwin, whose candle still trembled in its iron sconce from the hurry of his ascent. The bird's sealed cylinder bore the Dragon of Dragonstone impressed in red wax, a letter from Lord Stannis, terse and severe, declaring in a single bold hand that he would sail at once for Gulltown, muster what strength the Vale might lend him, and march on King's Landing by land even as his fleet harried the coast. The letter ended in a cold vow. "I will have the Iron Throne or die upon its steps." Ned studied the page beneath frosted glass panes that showed a world rhymed with hoarfrost. Cailin read beside him, silent save for the faint catch of breath he knew heralded apprehension. "Stannis moves at last," she said when the words ran out. "And at the worst possible moment." "At the only possible moment," Ned answered, rolling the vellum closed. "If he delays, Tywin will have the river crossings and the capital." Yet for all his certitude he felt the vice tightening. Renly rallied Tyrell roses in the south, Tywin gathered lion's teeth at the Trident, and the north itself, vast though it was, lay vulnerable should Ironborn or mountain clans sense weakness. One truth had shattered the realm's equilibrium, but 100 ambitions now sharpened its broken shards into weapons. He called the banners again that afternoon, houses small and great whose oaths had been half asleep since Balon Greyjoy's rebellion, sending ravens north and east to lonely keeps whose towers rose like frozen fingers from winter hills. By twilight the yard echoed to the arrival of Lady Meage Mormont astride a shaggy Garin, daughters riding hard behind. Their green-cloaked spearmen followed in a swallowtail of axes. Lord Wyman Manderly's silver trout and mermaid banners flapped at dusk as his train wheeled through the gates in a clatter of hooves and polished scale. One by one, the North answered, yet every man sworn was another mouth to feed with grain already dwindling and another heart that might break should the coming storm tear too wide. Robb moved among these lords with a stiffness that might have passed for poise to strangers, but to Ned was a young man's mask on a boy not yet weathered. "They look to me, father," Robb confessed as they walked the yard between stacks of rough timber destined for makeshift pikes. "When you ride south, they will expect me to command. I fear I'll fail them." "You will," Ned said, and Robb blinked, startled. "Every commander fails. The measure of a man is not faultlessness, but how he stands after fault. Remember your people are flesh, not pieces on a Sivas board. Learn their names, and they will carry you through mistakes." That night they dined in the great hall, though the hearths could scarce fight the creeping chill. Lady Meage recounted sketches of Ironborn sails sighted near Deepwood Moat, while Ser Helman Tallheart argued for striking pike first lest the Krakens raid their grain ships. Ned listened, weighing each word as if it were iron coin on a scale already tipped by too many debts. He would need every ship White Harbor could muster to ferry men to Moat Cailin's ruins and beyond. The notion of splitting strength westward gnawed at him. After the hall emptied, he found Cailin tying raven quills into neat bundles, her eyes distant beneath the lamplight. "Bran started his lessons again," she said without looking up. "Septon Chael thinks the study steadies his legs." There was pride in her voice, but fear threaded close beneath. Ned drew her into his arms. They spoke then as husband and wife rather than lord and lady, of children's futures, of quiet springs in some far tomorrow. Yet each knew such springs might never thaw, and dawn found them dressed in wool and mail with words unsaid. Far to the south, in a manor once belonging to Volantine spice traders, Cersei Lannister watched narrow sea mist curl across a darkened harbor and tried not to think of lions devoured by wolves. The Sellsword captains from Pentos had demanded heavier purses than expected. Tywin's chests of gold had arrived by galley late, and with each coin she spent she felt the rock recede across leagues of wine-dark water. Joffrey raged, pacing draftsman-pattern tiles while Myrcella embroidered lilies into a handkerchief already soaked at the corner. And Tommen played with wooden knights that bore neither stag nor lion but a sunburst he fancied bright. Cersei's brother would soon join them. Ravens said Jaime had slipped Ned Stark's grasp after the muck of Moat Cailin and ridden through the neck with a handful of outriders, bound for the Twins and then Seaguard to sail east. His safety was a poultice for festering wounds, yet a dagger too. Proof that the lion's roar still carried across kingdoms and that Tywin's will remained unbroken. She stroked the hilt of the wolf-headed dagger nightly, imagining the moment its point would replace the wolf's mercy with a lion's vengeance. Somewhere in those imaginings, the line blurred between dreams of Ned Stark kneeling before her in chains and nightmares where his honor carved kingdoms like stone. She drafted letters to Magister Illyrio, to the captains of the Golden Company, to Cartha's pureborn, offering gold now and crowns later. Somewhere distant, dragons stirred in rumor, and though she dismissed tales of silver-haired exiles as puffed-up fables, desperation sharpened curiosity. Queens might gamble everything on fire when thrones slipped from grasp. At King's Landing, chaos bloomed, with the royal family fled and Robert yet in the north raising what loyalty he could. The Red Keep became a hive of clawing interests. Grand Maester Pycelle counseled caution. His caution invariably meant inaction, while Lord Peter Baelish whispered of opportunity and counted who owed which debts. Varys glided through corridors like a wraith, hands hidden in voluminous sleeves, coaxing tongues with secrets only he could conjure. The gold cloaks, lacking the queen's golden largesse and the king's boisterous presence, turned to their own pursuits. Some sold protection, others sold swords. Small folk told tales of a shadow in spider-silk robes passing coin to bakers' boys for overheard gossip and of a smiling lord offering pardons to smugglers for information. Into the stew of rumor strode Renly Baratheon beneath a cloak sewn with 1,000 golden roses, Ser Loras Tyrell Constant at his heel. Who better to rule than a king who can charm the realm into peace? Renly asked upon the floor of the small council, his voice smooth as Dornish red. No crown rested on his brow, yet he spoke of fresh harvests from the reach, of bringing bright summer southward while winter besieged the north. None missed the dig at his brother, the charmer king. Some whispered, others thought of maggots sweetening rot. Pycelle stroked his beard and nodded like an ancient tortoise. Baelish smiled and considered potential lords to favor. Varys only blinked owlish, as though a web had twanged at some distant tremor. 2 nights after Renly's arrival, a hooded figure entered the Tower of the Hand and pressed sealed parchment into the eunuch's palm. When Varys broke the wax, he found a single line in a hand he knew too well. Stannis sails north. The wolves gather. Choose wisely, spider. There was no signature, but the paper carried the faint aroma of sea salt and smoke. Varys smiled, and in the silence of his chambers birds took wing. Meanwhile, the Vale grappled with its own tempest. Lisa Arryn closed the Ares gates to all but her son and fears, clinging to sky-high walls even as Rabar Royce argued that the Vale's knights should ride to honor Jon Arryn's memory beside his widow's sister's husband. Stannis' ships anchored at Gulltown in a sweep of black sails. Lady Lisa refused them portage for fear of offending lions she claimed lurked beneath every curtain of her bedding. Stannis cared little for her refusal and less for her tears. He seized the harbor by right of the king's warrant naming him rightful heir. The gulls shrieked alarm while the lords declarant debated duty over dinner tables heavy with blood-red stew. Ser Davos Seaworth rode ashore beneath banners stitched in a single night. Baratheon red in gold but quartered with the fiery heart of the Lord of Light at Melisandre's behest. Smoke from the charred remains of wooden idols rose over the dockside temples of the Seven, and whispers grew that the Onion Knight followed a queen in shadow and flame. Yet those whispers stilled when Davos spoke of justice for Jon Arryn and the need to sunder Lion from throne. Gulltown's merchants, weary of Lannister tariffs, found common cause, and coin flowed into Stannis' war chest faster than wine spilled from overturned casks. Before the full moon's rise, 16 ships bore Vale Knights across the narrow strait to Cracklaw Point, where muddy roads south might skirt the Lion's Eyes long enough to meet Robert's host. Above them, Melisandre burned leeches in braziers and murmured names. Tywin, Renly, Robb. Davos crossed himself and prayed Stannis never learned his own name whispered in fire. Back at Winterfell, Jon Snow prepared to depart for Castle Black. The decision weighed heavy as iron, yet every passing hour made leaving harder. Robb's eyes shone with a commander's blaze. Arya clung as though parting from half her soul, and Bran begged him to stay until the snows melted, telling grand stories of ravens with 3 eyes and wolves that spoke in dreams. Ned, stoic, embraced him beneath the heart tree and promised they would meet soon beyond the wall to see its wonders together. A white lie to soften farewell. Ghost padded at Jon's heel, silent sentinel, red gaze haunting. The cohort riding north comprised Benjen Stark, 24 recruits, and a wagon laden with grain Ned could spare. When they left the courtyard, banners snapping sharp and white against a leaden sky, Jon glanced back to see Sansa on the battlements, hair like auburn fire, and for the first time he sensed the tower of stories he had once believed safe beginning to crack. He pledged to build his own story of duty on frozen stones where secrets seldom kindled. Ned watched the column snake beyond the oak palisade outer wall, feeling a strand of life's tapestry pull taut toward some unseen loom. He turned then to meet a new arrival. Galbart Glover, soaked in sleet, bearing grim tidings, ironborn longships off Bear Island, and wildling raids reported from Skagos to the Flint Cliffs. Winter indeed crept closer when the Kraken and the Harefoot howled beneath the same moon. That night he met with Lady Meege and Galbart by the icy glow of hearth embers. "Greyjoy tests our coasts," Galbart said, rainwater dripping from his bearskin. "Deepwood scouts counted 20 sails. We cannot spare men and yet cannot leave the west undefended. Send ravens to Lady Donella at Bear Island," Meege urged, pounding the trestle with a ham-sized fist. "Mormont women hold axes as sharp as any man's. Let them bloody krakens until we answer."
Ned nodded.
"Aye, they shall, but we must show strength. I will dispatch Ser Roderick with 200 spears to Deepwood. The Ironborn raid when they smell weakness. We'll teach them the North still bites." Privately, he wondered how many bites the North could afford before teeth splintered. On the march south of the Neck, Jaime Lannister rode through storm country fields ablaze with dying stalks. The Kingslayer's golden armor lay dented in a packhorse. He traveled now in mailed leather and a plain cloak of mottled brown to fool watchful eyes. With him rode 5 men sworn to House Crakehall and 2 Selsails whose loyalty measured in coin weight. Jaime's thoughts wandered unbidden to his sister across the sea. An ache he masked beneath sardonic quips, and to the sword his father would place back in his palm when their paths converged. He pictured facing Eddard Stark again upon a field less sodden, where no old knight would intercede. He pictured a moment's silence after the killing blow and wondered whether victory tasted sweet or ash. At the Trident, Tywin's encampment spread like molten gold spill. Led along the river banks, pavilions emblazoned with roaring lions, siege towers half-assembled, trestles straining under wheels of larded cheese and casks of hippocras. Ser Kevin greeted his brother with accounts. River lords slow to bend the knee, Freys eyeing whichever side might spare their bridges, and rumors that Hoster Tully neared death. "We need the twins," Tywin said, frowning at a map pinned with lion-shaped daggers. "Send Cleos to treat, offer marriage if need be." He did not speak of Jaime until after the evening's councils, when they stood alone beneath a dripping awning. "Your escape gladdens me," Tywin said, voice flat as hammered copper. "Your bruised pride will mend faster than the realm. Next time, strike the wolf's heart or hold your blade." Jaime grinned. "I'll carve it with pleasure." But in private he sharpened his sword with more care than mirth, sensing the weight of expectation heavier than gold. Across the sea lanes north of Pentos, A sleek man-o'-war bearing a gilded maidenhead outsailed a storm that chased it like a black leviathan. Aboard, Prince Oberyn Martell lounged beneath an awning of striped orange silk, sipping sweet plum wine while his sand-colored daughters chattered about northern snows and direwolf legends. "We ride for war," he told them between laughter and sword forms. "But never forget pleasure." The Red Viper carried offers for Stannis and Robert both. Dorne spears in exchange for justice long overdue. Vengeance for Elia Targaryen smoldered within him like a coal banked in sand, waiting for the breath of opportunity. The death of Tywin's line, the fall of Lannister pride. Perhaps these would suffice where dragons had failed. Salt spray flecked his lean face as the Braavosi captain hailed a patrol of Pentoshi galleys under Lannister contract. The Viper smiled, drew his spear, and danced across deck boards slick with rain to the tune of screaming gulls. By dusk 2 galleys burned, and tilted masts lit the clouds in crackling orange stitches. Robb Stark's voice broke for the first time in council 10 days after Jon departed. Lord Greatjon Umber, too free with ale, had scoffed at the notion of winter quartering the host at Moat Cailin. "The young wolfling would have us burrow like badgers," Greatjon thundered. "When lions roar south." Robb slammed a mailed fist upon the table, tankard overturning amber foam across maps. "Badgers survive the blizzard," he snapped, startling himself almost as much as the hall. "Steel must be tended. Men must rest. Supply lines freeze. Would you have us starve bravely?" Silence settled. Then the great Jon threw back his shaggy head and laughed. He rose, knelt, and vowed to follow his Lord Robb into any snowdrift he chose. Later, beneath torchlight, Robb confessed to Ned that his heart had hammered like a smith's bellows through the exchange. Ned clasped his son's shoulder. "Leadership is forged in moments that terrify us," he said. "Remember the feeling. It will guide you." 20 leagues north of King's Landing, Stannis' vanguard crossed Blackwater Rush beneath banners of crowned stags aflame. At its head rode Ser Andrew Estermont and Ser Courtenay Penrose, voices hoarse from demanding passage from local lords who feigned deafness. Behind them, Melisandre sat a coal-black destrier, scarlet gown whipping in the breeze, her eyes fixed upon the distant city walls where torches flickered like fireflies. "A city of shadows," she murmured to Davos. "We shall sweep it clean." Davos rubbed the pouch at his hip where fingertip bones rested and prayed to a quieter god for fewer corpses than the priestess's fervor suggested. Within the Red Keep, chaos tightened its spiral. Lord Janos Slynt, bribed by Littlefinger, declared for Renly after a midnight council. By dawn, Varys convinced him the spider's coin spent sweeter, and Slynt vacillated again. When gold cloaks fought gold cloaks in Flea Bottom over rumored Tyrell grain barges, Pycelle shuttered his quarters and barred the door with timbers thick as a boar's spine. Renly seized the moment. He strode before the Iron Throne without crown or kingly mandate, but with Loras at his side and 200 Reach Knights shining bright. Before the baffled assembled court, he declared that the gods had delivered Robert south to prepare for Renly's own ascension, that the realm needed a youthful king who loved tourneys more than war and summer more than winter. The small folk cheered his easy smiles. The nobles hedged bets. The High Septon blinked behind crystal lenses and blessed whichever Baratheon might keep him rotund. Varys reported all to Ned by Raven, each missive a tapestry of tongues and secrets. Ned read them at a rough pine table outside Moat Cailin where wagons of peat smoked damp and heavy. "We fight lions," he told Roose Bolton, whose pale eyes shimmered like wet slate, "but must not forget the flowers blooming in our rear." Roose only smiled a bloodless smile and suggested the Leal Bolton flayers might prune those flowers unseen. Ned declined the offer with a curt shake. That night a snow squall swept the neck, muffling campfires and cloaking scouts in white. In the hush Ned dreamt of Lyanna again, but this time she stood upon a windy ridge holding a crown wrought of ice and iron. When he reached for her, she melted into snow that scoured his skin like knives. He woke before dawn, heart drumming, to news that Catelyn had ridden for Riverrun under small escort. She had left a note. "Hoster fades. I must be with father. The Tully banner may keep Fry Bridges friendly. Trust in me as I trust in you." Ned wanted to protest, but the raven had flown. Deepwood Mott's palisades strained beneath sodden snow when Ser Roderick Castle arrived. He found Lady Asha Greyjoy leading a raid almost to the gate itself, Ironborn tossing torches into storehouses heavy with salt pork. Ser Roderick's Northmen struck from the rear with howling fury. In the melee, Asha's laughter rang even as her men died around her. She lived up to Kraken legend, carving foes with twin axes before leaping a fallen log and escaping into dripping pines. Deepwood held, but word traveled fast. Balon Greyjoy tested every seam of the North's armor. Ned's jaw tightened at the Raven's message. War on 3 fronts seemed carved in fate now. He penned stern orders to White Harbor. Build galleys, harry coastline. Instruct Bear Island's women to light beacon fires at the first sight of sails. Send riders to Last Hearth and Carhold with word of Eastwatch patrols spotting wildling bands larger than seasons past. Maester Luwin's quill raced like a winter weasel, parchment piling high until wax supply dwindled. Ned wondered how many pleas the ravens could carry before silence answered instead. When the first snows hardened into crust, Robert Baratheon returned to Winterfell, soldiers caked in mud and northern grit. The king looked thinner, battle carved meat from his frame, leaving thick muscle corded beneath a belly still present but shrinking. He embraced Ned in the yard and whispered, "Come south with me. The throne will not wait." Ned agreed, though every step south felt like marching into a cavern of hungry lions. They rode within a fortnight, Robert, Ned, Ser Barristan, 1,000 chosen men-at-arms, and a brace of ravens dispatching updates. Robb remained to guard the north, Lady Meege as his war counselor, Galbart to mind Deepwood, and Roose to hold the moat with quiet menace. Bran, eyes bright with questions, watched from the gatehouse parapet. Arya threw snowballs that thudded off convoy wagons until Septa Mordane shrieked her back to obedience. Rickon clutched Shaggy Dog's scruff and wailed his father's name until Caitlyn's absence felt doubly raw. 3 days beyond the last river, they met a column of Selpeach wagons bound north, their drivers spooked by rumors of lions hunting travelers. Robert commandeered half for provisions. The women sang bawdy southern ballads that set soldiers grinning and Ned scowling behind his beard. Yet at campfires they traded stories of King's Landing's empty pleasure houses and gold cloaks hungry for coin. Ned saw the capital through their eyes. An ant nest kicked, scurrying ants bearing torches. On the 5th night, the aurora painted green swirls across the sky. Robert stood transfixed, then muttered a prayer to gods he seldom served. Ned sensed the king felt small beneath those lights, a warrior overshadowed by rambling heavens. He clasped Robert's shoulder. "Even kings are men beneath sky," he said. Robert exhaled, steam mingling with breath of tired horses. While armies trudged, Tyrion Lannister negotiated. Freed from Stark captivity by virtue of being nowhere near Winterfell during the Queen's flight, he traveled by river barge from the Trident to Maidenpool, where he met Lord Mouton over oysters and gold. Tyrion secured safe passage for lions along Blackwater Bay in exchange for quayside warehouses and coin enough to rebuild harbor walls. Then he wrote letters to Essos counting Sellsword companies willing to fight for Lannister gold. His satchel grew heavy with agreements, yet his heart sank heavier. He had read his sister's desperate pleas, knew father's fury, felt the realm tremble like thin ice beneath dancing elephants. Wine eased the dread until morning's light sharpened it again. He dreamed of dragons one night, 2 great beasts, one golden, one silver, devouring a stag between them. When he woke, he could not remember which dragon he rode. He shrugged the dream away, but each new dawn found details lingering like embers. Caitlin reached Riverrun through sleet and spent the first night by her father's bedside, holding a hand already bone beneath skin. Hoster Tully drifted between fevered dreams, calling for Edmure, for Lisa, for a bride in winter roses. In waking moments, he clasped Caitlin's fingers. "Keep them safe," he whispered. "All the fish in the world cannot face a lion alone." She promised, tears spilling hot. Outside his chamber, Edmure fretted over Riverland's lord's threatening rebellion if Riverrun aided the North too openly, while maesters bled Hoster to balance humors. Caitlin slept little, dividing nights between father and scrolls. By candlelight she drafted letters to the Blackfish at the Twins, to Lady Went at Harrenhal, to Brynden Tully rumored riding with river raiders, urging each to weigh honor against fear. She signed with the Trout and Dire Wolf entwined, hoping sigils carried weight when steel and blood seemed to decide all. In King's Landing's riotous streets, Renly held a tourney. Flowers and banners lined the mud of the dragon pit as knights jousted before ragged stands. Peaches imported from the Reach were thrown to cheering crowds. Gold dragons minted from Lannisters' seized vaults clinked in betting pools. Loras Tyrell unhorsed 3 challengers before noon, gifting each rose to maidens near swooning. On the final tilt, an armored mystery knight bearing a helm shaped like a maiden's heart split Renly's favored challenger from saddle. When the victor knelt before the would-be king, helm removed, Brienne of Tarth gazed up with adoration. Renly offered her a rainbow-striped cloak and named her to his Kingsguard of 7, first of its kind. The small folk buzzed with delight at this new chivalry. The highborn quavered at the audacity. Yet outside the pit, Stannis' outriders scouted the Gold Road's approach while Davos slipped through postern gates to meet with Varys in a candlelit apothecary cellar. There the smuggler learned of Renly's crowd-charmed ascension and whispered Stannis' intent to answer with steel, not roses. Varys listened, offered candied plums, and considered which song the realm would applaud when blood stained the cobblestones. At Moat Cailin, Roose Bolton's hunters caught a Lannister scout wearing cloaks dyed brown with mud, his orders sewn beneath saddle lining. The parchment detailed a feint toward Seaguard while the main host marched for Riverrun. Roose sent the prisoner to Robb under heavy guard, alive but bleeding from carefully placed cuts. Robb read the orders and summoned Greatjon, Glovers, Manderleys, even young Lord Yora of House Forrester, who had answered late with fresh-polished axes. They plodded through ice-mirrored dawn until Ned's Raven arrived bearing news of Robert's column southbound and a request. Hold the moat. Guard the neck. We must not fight on 2 fronts. Robb's jaw set, but he saw wisdom. He dispatched half the host under Greatjon east to harass Ironborn along Stony Shore, yet kept pikes braced against southern march. In the quiet after strategy, Robb found Lady Lyanna Mormont, 12 and fierce, practicing with wooden sword under the eye of her mother. He watched the girl's form, the savage grace of each swing, and thought of Sansa's letters speaking of courtly artifice. The North raised wolves, not roses. He hoped the realm would remember. South of Harrenhal, Jaime Lannister at last joined Tywin's host. He arrived battered but unbowed, kneeled before his father among casks of flame wine, and swore to end the Starks. Tywin lifted him, placed a sword freshly forged by Casterly Rock's best smith into his grip. A blade of Lannister steel, bright as sunrise, named Regalia. "Win me a crown or a corpse," Tywin said. Jaime's grin flashed. He drilled that evening with Gregor Clegane, their sparking blades lighting dusk. Each clang rang across camps, foretelling war's crescendo. The first skirmish erupted at Fairmarket, where Tully banners met Lannister outriders over contested tolls. Edmure commanded, flush with new resolve. Yet Tywin's cavalry broke the fish wave with pincer charges executed like clockwork. Riverrun's levies fled across fords, leaving Edmure captured amid trampled reeds. Jaime personally unbound him long enough to taunt. "The fish swims upstream but forgets the hook." Edmure spat blood and vowed stark vengeance. When ravens bore news to Caitlin, her tears fell upon father's bedding, while outside Frey riders demanded concessions for crossing the Twins. Caitlin hardened like river ice. She saddled a courser, rode through night to treat with Lord Walder, whose leering smile chilled deeper than winter. She bargained daughter for hostage, feast for safe passage, but every term weighed heavy. She left the crossing uncertain which price would bleed most. East of the Trident, Stannis set camp on Weeping Ridge, a barren rise that overlooked the city's walls across dark water. He ordered trebuchets assembled from timbers stripped of the gods wood. In a nearby September, Melisandre counseled lighting the siege stones aflame with alchemist's wildfire blessed by her red god. The city will burn, and light will devour shadow. Stannis considered, jaw tight. Davos argued caution. Wildfire answered to no master. In the end, Stannis compromised. Only half the stones would bear green flame. That night Melisandre bled a black-winged raven over a brazier, crimson sparks spiraling skyward. Soldiers muttered of omens, and some dreamed of demons dancing within flames. Inside King's Landing, Renly's tourney tables vanished, replaced by panic. Littlefinger convinced Renly to ride out and treat with his brother. A meeting of equal claimants, he said, eyes glinting. Loras insisted on escort. Brienne volunteered to ride by night wearing the mystery helm once more. Varys watched them depart and whispered, "Many a kingdom tumbles upon fraternal love." In the library vaults beneath Winterfell, Bran Stark discovered an antler-carved box locked since Aegon the Uncrowned's reign. With Rickon's enthusiastic hammering, the lid finally split, revealing parchments brittle as leaves. One detailed a map of Skagos and Old Night's Watch signal fires long abandoned. Another recorded sightings of creatures in white at the Shadow Tower centuries prior. Bran carried them to Maester Luwin, breathless, but Luwin's brow furrowed. "Children of the forest fables," he dismissed, yet a shiver ran through him. He wrote to the Citadel for guidance. The ravens might bring reply, if they survived the skies. As winter's teeth sank deeper, each thread pulled tauter. Arya practiced water dancing with her wooden sword near the Godswood Pond, reflections of red leaves rippling with every thrust. Sansa stitched direwolves into a sash she swore she would wear at court when father returned triumphant. Rickon began sleeping with Shaggy Dog curled across his feet, claiming the shadows whispered if the wolf left. Robb studied letters late into the dark, the weight of the crownless north settling across his shoulders. Ned crossed the Bar Rollins, meeting envoys bearing word that Tywin's army besieged Riverrun and that Edmure had been taken. Pain etched across his features. He had promised Caitlin to protect Edmure. Robert cursed, demanded faster pace, but snow hampered wagons. At night Ned's dreams returned. Lyanna beneath weirwood boughs now spoke. "Promise me, Eddard, promise you will not let honor slay the wolf." He woke trembling. At last, outside the ruins of Harrenhal, they found a slaughter. Burned tents, broken wagons, charred corpses bearing lion pins. A sigil of a fiery phoenix in beat-up silver armor stood amidst ashes. Beric Dondarrion had harried Tywin's supply lines. Ned exchanged grim courtesies with the Lord of Blackhaven, then pressed south. Every mile now thrummed with tension. Renly and Stannis met at dusk in the fields of Bitterbridge, torch poles marking neutral ground. Wind whipped cloaks, carrying the damp scent of the Mander. Renly arrived amid armored tulip hues, Loras radiant, Brienne somber. Stannis wore black plate edged red. Melisandre flamed behind like a living torch. Words flew, claims, legitimacy, duty to the realm. Renly's jest cut. "The realm needs laughter, brother, not leeches." Stannis's retort fell like iron. "The realm has bled for your laughter." No agreement birthed. That night Renly's camp shimmered with lantern light while shadow danced at the canvas walls. A shape slipped in, black, sinuous, bearing Stannis's face, if face it had. Brienne's scream split dark. By dawn Renly lay breathless, throat opening in a red smile. Chaos erupted. Reach Knights blamed Stannis, shouted witchcraft, drew steel against Baratheon men. Loras cradled Renly's corpse, rose wild-eyed, and swore to carve Stannis's heart. Brienne, drenched in blood, fled northward guided by Ser Dantos, half-mad with grief. Word raced to King's Landing on wings of dread. Varys whispered into Littlefinger's ear that nighttime shadows killed dreams faster than swords. Within hours, half of Renly's host bent the knee to Tyrell banners backing Joffrey's claim. Mace Tyrell traded roses for Lannister gold, his daughter Marjorie ready to slip into a queen's gown yet warm. The game reshuffled. When ravens carried Renly's death to Robert's camp, the king howled, a sound more animal than man. He drained a skin of sour red, then smashed his warhammer against a kraken-blackened pine until splinters rained. Ned stood silent as grief bled into rage. "He was but a boy," Robert rasped, tears streaking grime. "My brothers fall like leaves, and I cannot stop winter." Ned offered no empty comfort. He guided Robert to the command tent and laid new maps. King's Landing ringed by 3 armies. Stannis to the east, Joffrey and Tyrell's within walls. Tywin marching west to relieve city. A 3-headed dragon of siege. Robert stared, finally whispering, "The realm bleeds. We end this, we strike for the heart." Ned nodded, though his bones felt hollow. They pushed south again, cutting cross-country to outpace Tywin. Scouts rode ahead seeking Samite Hill where vantage over the Blackwater could guide assault. Ser Barristan counseled rallying Stannis first, but Robert feared hesitation would gift Tywin the city. "We will break the gate ourselves if nay." "DB," he declared. The men cheered, though Ned heard uncertainty under chants. In the dungeons of Harrenhal, Arya Stark, disguised as a scullion named Weasel, listened to whispers of prisoners from the west brought for torment. She heard names: Gendry, Hot Pie, even a japing singer who mocked the mountain. One night she passed by Jaqen Hagar's cell and felt his razor gaze pierce disguise. "A girl has a name?" he asked through iron bars. She offered none. Yet when she later saw the torturer Tickler drag a child to the kennels, she scribbled the Tickler's name on a piece of parchment and slid it through Jaqen's grate. The next dawn the Tickler was found trussed like a stag, face blue. Arya burned the parchment, unsure if vengeance warmed or chilled. Harrenhal's master changed weekly. Amory Lorch gave way to Vargo Hoat, each crueler. Rumors swirled of a new lord coming, a man who flayed as Bolton did. Arya's stomach twisted, hope and horror. She prayed her sword lessons might one day free them. At Riverrun's siege lines, Cailin rode through arrow rain to reach Tywin's pavilion. She demanded parley. Guards laughed until she named herself Tully and Stark, then escorted her to the lion's den. Within, Tywin sat at a carved weirwood table strewn with casualty ledgers, his eyes cold coins. "Lord Tywin," she began, "you hold my brother. I hold the twins' bridges and Moat Cailin's gates. Trade Edmure for passage north, and your grandson lives free of northern blades." Tywin considered, tracing a quill along a column of dead footmen. "You bargain with a sword at my throat and expect mercy? No, Lady Stark. I will take the bridges, and your brother will watch." He dismissed her, and she departed trembling but unbroken. She found Brynden outside encampments, the Blackfish leading harrying strikes along riverbanks. They spoke beneath willow branches, dusk painting water rust red. "The lion knows only strength," Brynden said. "We must find ours." Cailin nodded, mind racing. That night, a small boat slipped downriver under moonless sky bearing a silent cargo. A hooded Edmure spirited away by Tully loyalists bribing lion sentries with fry coin minted from Caitlin's dowry gems. When Tywin discovered the breach, his roar cracked banners loose from poles. While storms brewed on land, Balon Greyjoy declared himself king of salt and rock, Iron Islands free once more. His daughter Asha raided Deepwood anew, while son Theon pressed Harrowinks along Stony Shore. Bear Island women fought like she-bears. Lady Meage's second daughter Lyra killed an Ironborn raider twice her size with a boathook and was named Shieldbearer. Ravens clashed overhead carrying cries for aid. Robb dispatched Ser Helman Tallheart with 300 to assist, but the war's spread became cancerous. Ned and Robert crested the ridge above Blackwater at sundown. King's Landing lay sprawled in sunset, walls glinting dull gold. Smoke spiraled from chimneys. Wildfire stockpiles glowed faint green in alchemist cellars, a sight Ned's spies confirmed. Stannis' siege towers dotted the eastern bank, Tyrell ships blockaded the harbor, and Lannister banners snapped atop the Red Keep. Robert regarded it all, expression carved from stone. "I fought once to save the realm from madness," he muttered. "Now I must fight my own blood." Ned placed a gauntlet hand upon the king's arm. "We still fight for realm and right. The crown's weight is heavy. Let us lift it together or not at all." Below, scouts returned breathless. Tywin's vanguard 2 days' march behind, Renly's remaining forces fractured but tied to Joffrey now, and wildfire shipments moving to walls nightly. Robert ordered siege lines drawn west of the river, catapults assembled from felled cedar. Ned directed engineers to dig trenches against Sortie, using mud to shield from fire. They worked by torchlight. That night, as Robert walked camp resplendent in battered stag armor, the men cheered. But Ned saw the tremor at the corner of his mouth. Fear perhaps, or memory. Within his tent, Robert confessed, "If I fall, promise me the boy will not sit the throne."
Ned hesitated.
Which boy? Robert closed eyes. Any bastard of lion's seed. Ned swore though his chest clenched. Honor again the blade without hilt. Sleep eluded him. He wrote letters to Robb, to Cailin, to Jon at the wall, words of fatherly pride, counsel, and love unspoken. He sealed them with the dire wolf in black wax, praying ravens would fly quicker than fate. At dawn, bells pealed within the city. A grand procession wound from the great September. Joffrey Baratheon crowned anew, Marjorie Tyrell at his side as betrothed. The small folk cheered free bread flung from wagons, though burnt crusts cut gums. On the walls the hound patrolled, helm hidden. He watched wildfire barrels rolled into place and muttered curses. Across the river Stannis' engines loosed first stones, some afire, crashing into mud within the wall's outer ring. Lannister scorpions answered, bolts screaming overhead. Robert's camp pounded drums, signaling ranks to march. The three armies poised like knives above a feast. Ned mounted, heart pounding like thunder against breastplate. The sun climbed, blood-red through smoke haze. Somewhere a lone singer began a dirge of the last dragon dying on the trident. Fell silent as catapults roared. The dance of stags and lions had begun, but the North's wolf held its teeth ready, and beyond the wall something older stirred, unseen by men engrossed in crowns. Eddard Stark urged his horse forward, banner of the direwolf snapping overhead, eyes fixed on a city he had once despised for its decadence, yet now sought to save from a conflagration sparked by truth. He whispered a prayer to the old gods, felt the chill of home upon his neck despite heat rising from battle lines, and rode to meet whatever chapters remained in a saga rewritten because one man chose honor above comfort beneath the frosted boughs of Winterfell. The morning before the assault broke cold and utterly without wind, as though the sky itself held its breath while three armies wound their iron limbs around the swollen Blackwater. In Robert's western camp, cook fires smoldered low, their smoke reluctant to rise. The king had decreed every banner furled and every horse left bridled. At first light he would sound the advance, and the stag would rend both lion and fiery heart alike, or so his guttural vow of midnight had promised. But dawn crept tardy, painting frost across splintered pavises and the knuckles of men who clutched spears like prayers. Eddard Stark woke before the trumpets, roused by the gravelled murmur of Ser Barristan Selmy outside his tent flap. The old knight had come with a basin of steaming water and news from the far pickets. Stannis' engineers had dragged a floating bridge halfway across the river under cover of darkness, using barges lashed with iron chains and casks of pine resin. Ned splashed his face and felt the ache of sleepless weeks flare behind his eyes. When the sun touches that bridge, Ser Barristan warned, war will spill over it like torch oil. Ned nodded, buckled his brigandine, and stepped into frosted grass alive with muffled movement. Rank captains hissed orders. Archers strung you under their arm, testing heft. Smiths darted between lines, tightening rivets that might mean the margin between living flesh and sheared bone. He found Robert kneeling between wagons, bareheaded, trying to coax a spark from flint to light the taper in front of a crude field altar. 3 candles already guttered there. One for Lyanna, one for Renly, one for the realm entire. The king's hands trembled as the spark caught at last. Ned thought to offer comfort but remembered how often words had failed the gulf now yawning between them. Instead he knelt beside his friend, adding his own silent entreaty to nameless gods older than stone. Across the river, Stannis Baratheon watched from a siege tower's crow's nest while Melisandre's red robes billowed like a trapped flame within the open parapet. Below, the half-finished bridge groaned beneath the weight of ox-drawn rams and armored men who slogged across knee-high planks already slick with frost. Ser Imry Florent oversaw the column, barking that no man pause lest cold swallow his courage. Stannis' jaw clenched at every stutter of progress, measuring distance to the opposite shore by instinct finer than any ranger's eye. "At sunrise we loose," he said. "Signal when that first golden disk breaks the hills." Melisandre closed her eyes and breathed a word that tasted of smoke and copper. In the brazier at her back, 3 leeches writhed upon hot coals, their guts swollen with king's blood that Davos had drawn in secret the night before. One burst with a hiss. A plume of black steam curled skyward. "The darkness has but one champion now," she whispered, gaze retuning at last to Stannis. "Trust in the light, my king, and you will rule." "I trust walls that breach and men that hold them," Stannis replied, but he did not order her away. Within King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister drank the dawn through glass walls of the Tower of the Hand, gulping sour wine because the taste reminded him of home, or what home might still be beneath father's banners. He had not slept. Parchments littered the rug at his feet, each a redrawing or revision of the chain plan he had begged the alchemists to accelerate. The chain lay finished now, coiled like a bronze serpent beneath the rippled waters of the Blackwater, unseen and silent save to those who knew where to look. "If the gods are kind," he muttered, "Stark and Stag will gut each other first." But Tyrion had never trusted gods and doubted kindness existed beyond anecdotes. He took parchment and quill again, drafting another contingency even as feet pounded the corridor outside. Ser Mandon Moore appeared, white cloak bright as ice. "The Queen requests your presence," the King's Guard intoned. "His Grace means to survey the battlements." Tyrion followed, limping through corridors alive with the clatter of panicked servants. Joffrey met them atop Maegor's holdfast, wrapped in gilded mail too heavy for his shoulders. His expression flickered between terror and glee when Tyrion pointed across the river at Stannis's crawling siege tower. "They look like ants," Joff announced. "Burn them all when they reach the bank." Tyrion bowed. "Wise counsel, your grace, though wildfire cares little which ant nest it devours. We must time our flames." At that moment a maester's rook burst overhead, wings frantic, as if portending the same. Ned Stark spent final moments before the horn walking the length of Robert's line with Ser Barristan and Ser Jorah Mormont. Exiled no longer, now recalled at Robert's behest for deeds done at the Trident. The bear's eyes glinted when Ned clasped his forearm. Whatever debts owed to queen or coin had been suspended by the approach of true war. Ned reminded him the North was watching. Jorah answered, "My sword belongs to the right side today, Lord Stark. Gods help me make it the lasting one." Horn blasts thrummed across the fields, 3 from Robert's van, 2 from Stark banners, then a single mournful note from the rear, their pre-appointed signal. The earth rumbled as 8,000 men began to move, hoofbeats shaking brittle frost into glittering flurries. Stannis's bridge lay in shadow still, half its length shrouded by river mist. But his lines advanced in matched cadence, emerald and crimson banners framing a mouth of steel. Siege stones thundered from his trebuchets, arching high before splashing among Robert's light cavalry, shattering men and mounts in fountains of mud. Robert roared and kicked his destrier into a charge, his warhammer lifted overhead. Ned fell into place beside Selmy, trying to keep pace as the ground pitched with the weight of 1,000 lances. Arrows hissed past like enraged wasps, clattering off shields. Somewhere to the north, a separate trumpet answered, the Tyrell horns atop the walls, perhaps signaling Joff's show of strength, or maybe calling for more barrels of wildfire. Ned could not tell. The first collision came where Stannis's vanguard reached the end of their floating bridge and found Robert's outriders already hacking into their flank. Plank tethers snapped, barges bucked. Men plunged into water black as ink and twice as cold. Ned led a file of Winterfell shields through a gap where a Florence standard drooped untended, and steel rang like church bells as he took a merman-crested sergeant's blow on his pauldron and answered with a thrust to the man's throat. To his left, Jorah Mormont split helm and skull with a downward chop. To his right, Selmy disarmed a knight, pivoted, and hamstrung the man's charger in one fluid sequence that seemed more art than battle. But Stannis's men came on relentless, their discipline colder than the river wind. For every man Robert felled, 2 more closed ranks. Crimson cloaks pressed forward behind seven-pointed star shields ironically borrowed from Faith Militant Pattern's long band. A horn trumpeted again, this time from the city walls. Ned spun in saddle to see a gout of green flame blossom against the barges moored to Stannis' rear. Wildfire. A collective gasp tore from hundreds of throats as the pyre leapt skyward, 7 stories high, devouring canvas and rope and men, before collapsing in a wave that licked along the river's oily surface. Eddard felt heat on his cheeks, though half a league off. The bridge's supply line disintegrated, yet the portion spanning midstream remained, a flaming archway spewing black smoke into dawn. Whether by design or mistimed desperation, the city's defenders unleashed too soon. The chain still lay submerged, and the wildfire reached only the rearmost barges. Stannis' forward troops were now stranded but not surrounded. Worse, Robert's lines found themselves hemmed between fiery water and a wall of stag and flame shields that fought with the ferocity of men who knew retreat impossible. High above the carnage, Tyrion watched the misfire and swore so foully that a Septa fainted at his elbow. "Pull the chain, you fools!" he spat, though his voice could not reach the docks. Runners already scrambled to creak winches within the mud gate, but the tide's sluggish pull worked against them. The dwarf wheeled on the trembling pyromancer Cailin. "How many pots remain?" "Several hundred, my lord. But the stores in the guild hall are farthest from the walls. Roll them down the slope if you must, and pray to whichever god answers lunatics." Tyrion snatched a half-helm from a passing squire and began descending the battlements. Joffrey called after him, demanding explanation. "Your uncle goes to save your city," Tyrion flung over his shoulder. "Stay and watch if you've the stomach." Below, gold cloaks dragged brass carts heaped with green-sealed jars toward the parapets. One stumbled, a jar cracked, and the puddle hissed thin green flames until water buckets drowned it. Tyrion snatched a torch, gritting teeth as he helped steady another cart. "Easy," he muttered. "Pretend it's your cock. Hold it like you love it, but drop it and you die." Nervous laughter rippled. Sometimes mockery served where courage fled. On the field, Ned sensed momentum shifting. Robert's center pressed forward still, but their flanks foundered. Asha-black smoke from the burning barges drifted thick, stinging eyes, turning sunrise into hell's dusk. He ordered riders to arc left toward the ruins of a half-collapsed barn. From there they could pivot into Stannis' exposed side if timing favored. As he and Selmy led the maneuver, a shout rose from rear ranks. Tywin's standards sighted beyond distant hills, red and gold columns snaking into view far sooner than scouts had predicted. "Gods!" Eddard breathed. Selmy met his gaze. "The lions come for dinner," the old knight said grimly. "They had hours at most." Robert, oblivious, cleaved through a wall of spears, warhammer spraying chips of mail and bone. Ned spurred toward him, but sudden commotion rippled from Robert's guard. A crossbow bolt caught the king in the thigh. Robert bellowed, staggered, kept fighting. A second bolt thunked into his gorget, glancing off, but the distraction allowed a mace to crash against his shoulder. Horse and rider went down amid trampling hooves. Ned's pulse roared louder than any horn. He hacked through 2 men, reached Robert as Selmy dragged the king from under a writhing destrier. Blood dripped thick between fingers clenched around the bolt in Robert's leg. "Just a scratch," the king snarled, but his eyes flickered. Selmy tied a tourniquet. Ned shouted for the king's surgeon. All the while the press of fighting closed around them. Snow perhaps fell. The ash looked white now, swirling through sunlight smothered by smoke. Ned's mind darted to Winterfell, to children whose letters he had not yet dispatched. He set teeth and ordered the rear guard to form a living wall. "Hold," he shouted, words rasping throat raw. "Hold for your king." Stannis felt the first tremor beneath the bridge planks and knew in an instant his supply line was gone. But retreat meant drowning or being shot like carp. Advance remained. "Forward!" he commanded, sword raised. His infantry roared. Drums pounded a heartbeat. They surged, pushing Robert's wavering ranks toward the muddy bank. If they could drive the stag horn into the lion that now crested the hills, Tywin would meet slaughter instead of prey. Melisandre's laughter floated eerie above the din as green firelight danced in her pupils. "The fire shows victory," she sang. A flaming arrow arced from behind, embedding in her tower's pennant. Cloth burst aflame, but she did not flinch. Stannis wished for her certainty. Tyrion finally reached the riverside winch houses. Sweat streaked his brow, though the air remained frigid. "Raise it now," he barked. Chains clanked, water churned, and the great bronze serpent peeled from riverbed, links as thick as a man's thigh breaching the surface. Creaking, shuddering, it climbed until taut. Any ship attempting passage would dash itself to pieces. Too late for wildfire at the rearmost barges, but not too late for the rest. Tyrion signaled with a scarlet kerchief. One by one, for trebuchets atop the walls loosed casks bound in iron. They arced low, smashing into mid-river where currents sucked green flame across Stannis' stranded vanguard. Screams rose, drowned by hiss and roar of alchemy gone mad. Yet many of Robert's own men hacked so near the blast that they, too, vanished in emerald bloom. War cared little for sides. Ned saw the inferno sweep over water behind him and felt its heat lick his cloak. But ahead, Stannis' shock troops still pressed. He rallied what remained of Winterfell pikes to brace their shaking line. Through churning smoke he glimpsed the stag's standard hedging back. Robert's personal guard withdrew burdened by the king, arms linked. Selmy caught Ned's eye and shook his head once. Wound grave. Duty threatened to rend Ned in two. He wanted to ride with Robert, keep him alive, shield him. But one look at the chaos told him the only gift he could give was time. He wheeled Grey Wind. No, that was Robb's wolf. His own mount, West, rallying knights who bore Kraken trophies on spears. Protect the withdrawal. Loose horses to block their advance. The Northmen answered with a roar. They charged, smashing flank into Stannis' spear wall, buying minutes. Ned fought like a man who knew every passing heartbeat measured his children's futures. Blade met helm, shattered. He lost it, drew dagger, drove it under a gorget seam. Steel rang my ears. He tasted copper. He was alive. A horn pealed high, a single note from Tywin's approaching host. Lannister. Cavalry began descending the slope, battle in full view. Lions charging, sunlight glinting off 1,000 gilt helms. Stannis' men wavered, caught between wildfire tied behind and golden wave ahead. Ned realized the killing field would soon be every span of dirt beneath their feet. He had one chance. He spurred through breaking lines until he reached a drummer from the King's Landing militia, half dead with arrow in gut, still clutching sticks. Ned seized them. Over the din he hammered the cadence that Winterfell used to signal retreat to Rally Point Delta. The pattern cut through roar like a remembered lullaby. Northern ranks, trained on those beats since squires, shifted instinctively, forming rough wedge around the wounded king's litter. As Lannister trumpets tore the sky, the wedge began to move, slow but steady, toward a low embankment studded with brush, cover enough to regroup. Stannis, seeing his prize slip, bellowed fresh orders. He mounted a captured courser, led charge again, but the wildfire behind him leapt anew as a cask exploded from Tyrion's trebuchets, severing the remainder of his bridge in a column of jade fire. Supply lines gone, rear ranks in burning water, left flank about to meet lions. Still he rode. The collision of stag and lion shook the valley. Tywin's cavalry smashed into Stannis' left, lances shattering shield walls. Yet the ground proved treacherous, churned to mire. Many horses fell, impaled by fallen pikes. Jaime Lannister led his father's vanguard, golden cloak streaked with soot. He sought the king with murder in his gaze but found Stannis' rearguard instead. Ned glimpsed their clash only briefly. Sparks showered as regalia met Stannis' own sword, a duel that churned bodies around them like eddies around stone. He would have watched longer, but arrows rained. In the city, Cersei watched from a tower window carved high above the interior courtyard of Maegor's Holdfast. The lilac sky behind her turned jaundiced by wildfire's foul glow. She wore black silk, hair bound in a simple tail, no crown. Her expression remained unreadable as news arrived by panting messengers. Robert wounded, Stannis pinned, Tywin engaged. When Joffrey burst in demanding to ride out and finish the wolves himself, she slapped him so hard the room rang. "You will stay on that throne until the realm's new shape reveals itself," she hissed, eyes fever bright. Joff whimpered, but the blow stunned him silent long enough for her to recite a prayer she remembered from childhood. Except now the 7 faces all bore lions' manes. The sun climbed but offered no warmth. Ned's rally wedge reached the scrubby embankment where Robert lay pale upon a litter, lips cracked. The surgeon had cut the bolt and bound the thigh, but blood soaked the wrappings anew. Robert's eyes fluttered. "Ned," he croaked, "tell me the realm. Tell me." His voice drifted. Selmy knelt, hand trembling on the king's brow. "Hold fast, your grace," he pleaded. "Hold for the realm." Ned's own heart thundered. "We must move him," he said, but the surgeon muttered, "Travel would kill." Behind them banners toppled. Lion horns rose. Stannis's forces buckled yet refused surrender. Tyrion's chain, now fully drawn, had trapped half of Stannis's rearguard with fleeing Tyrell supply skiffs. Green fire raced along hulls, and screams carried over water so loud birds took flight in frenzied clouds. A shadow passed overhead. No bird but something darker. Cinders swirling from the wildfire, briefly casting shapes that seemed draconic. Ned shook the vision away. "Focus." Selmy looked to him. "If Robert dies here, the throne is lost." "To which claimant?" Ned snapped, unslinging his shield against a fresh arrow volley. Selmy's answer drowned beneath the roar of Jaime's horn as the Kingslayer spotted their cluster. Jaime cut a crimson path through ragged lines, twin lion's head buckles gleaming. A cohort of Lannister shields formed wedge behind him. Ned pushed Selmy aside and advanced, sword raised. Jaime smiled, blood streaking his brow like war paint. "Round 2, Wolf," he called. Ned said nothing. Their blades crashed. The duel unfolded while armies crumbled at its periphery. Jaime's speed remained uncanny. He feinted thrice in a breath, forcing Ned to yield ground. But Ned fought with grim weight, each parry sending shock up Jaime's arm.
Stil rang again. Spark stankset.
Jaime's next thrust slipped, scoring Ned's forearm. Chain beneath split skin but not bone. Ned countered, slicing across Jaime's greave. Cloth tore, blood spattered. They circled among corpses steaming. Jaime's grin thinned. "You're slower, Stark," he taunted. "Honor weighs you down." Ned answered with silence, pivoted, slammed pommel into Jaime's helm. Golden visor skewed. Jaime stumbled, regained, slashed low. Ned hopped back, too late. The tip found flesh above his knee. Pain white-hot. He grunted, dropped to one knee. But as Jaime raised sword for kill, an arrow whistled from somewhere behind and thudded into Jaime's pauldron. He hissed, staggered. Ned used the breath to drive upward, hilt deep, just beneath breastplate where gap met crimson sash. Blade slid between ribs. Jaime gasped, eyes wide with something beyond surprise, perhaps understanding. But Ned twisted too late. Jaime's backplate caught most of the thrust, edge skidding. Enough though, Kingslayer reeled, clutching wound. A Lannister guard barreled between them, dragging his lord away. Ned forced himself upright, blood slick on greaves. He limped back toward Robert's litter and froze. The warhammer lay untouched, but Robert's chest no longer rose. Selmy knelt motionless, tears on weathered cheeks. Ned felt the world tilt. The king was dead. Selmy breathed one word, half-mast. Already the crown's standard drooped. Baratheon trumpeters sounded 3 low calls. Across the field men paused, as if the entire host had inhaled and forgot to breathe out. Then chaos resumed tenfold. Stannis' soldiers, hearing the blasts, screamed victory and redoubled assault though ringed on 2 sides. Lannister knights pushed deeper, determined to seize Robert's corpse for proof. Winterfell pikes closed over their king, but numbers dwindled. Ned touched Robert's forehead, still warm. Grief threatened to drown him, but a roar overhead reminded him duty outlived kings. Tywin's second wave descending. He grabbed the warhammer, ignored its weight. "Sell me with me," he rasped. "We must break through north and reach the King's Road." The children, a new horn call, distant yet distinct, Manderly trumpets from the river, white banners with mermaid. White Harbor Fleet had sailed down coast during night on orders signed by Ned weeks prior. Their galleys now appeared beyond burning chain, decks bristling with archers. They loosed volleys onto Tyrell ships guarding harbor mouth, sowing confusion. Ned felt something like hope flicker. "Signal Manderly," he ordered a squire. "Tell him hold the channel open for retreat." Selmy nodded. They began moving the king's body toward the shoreline where the fleet might draw close enough to ferry wounded. Around them, northern ranks consolidated, forming shield wall that inched backward one agonizing yard at a time. Stannis, seeing his chance slipping, pressed toward Robert's hammer standard. He carved path through chaos, Melisandre keeping a pace mere steps behind, red eyes fixed on Warhammer as if it were some relic of prophecy. But Lannister ranks crashed into his side again, halting progress. 3 directions of battle ground together until friend and foe blurred. It might have ended there, one great knot of blood and smoke, had a sudden peal of thunder not split the cloudless sky. Every head turned skyward as a shadow vast as castle ramparts swept across the battlefield. No dragon, not yet, but storm clouds born of unnatural heat where wildfire devoured river gases. Lightning crackled green, struck river in a curtain of sparks. For an instant battle paused, awe-trumping hate. When the shock faded, men found they no longer knew formations. The dead outnumbered living. Commanders had fallen or were separated. In that shatter of hierarchy, Ned Stark seized initiative. He raised the warhammer above Robert's lifeless body and shouted a command that blasted through clamor. "North to the boats! Winterfell, protect the king!" Selmy echoed. Horns answered, first one, then many, valley filling with the deep call of retreat. Even some of Stannis's men mistook it for their own and fell back. Lions, scenting false retreat, hesitated lest trap close on them. Under this confusion, Ned's wedge carved toward riverbank, where Manderly skiffs now grounded amid reeds. Wounded loaded, including Robert's beer. Selmy boarded last, gripping Ned's hand. "Come," he urged, but Ned shook his head. "Not yet. Someone must cover withdrawal." He limped back up the slope, blood still seeping down boot. A small knot of Northmen rallied about him, maybe 50. They held a rise where fang-shaped rocks jutted like broken teeth. Lannister cavalry approached, but terrain slowed them. Stannis's rearguard too battered to flank. For precious minutes, Ned's grim band braced, repelling probe after probe. Each fallen comrade bought another boatload's safety. At last Selmy returned, dragging him by elbow. "Enough, Lord Stark." Ned's vision blurred. He had lost more blood than sense. They stumbled to final skiff. As rope cast off, he watched shore recede. Field now just a smear of armor and banners dark beneath swirling smoke. His last sight of that hell was Jaime Lannister leaning upon regalia, shield discarded, watching the fleet slip away with an expression Ned could not name. Resentment, yes, but edged with weariness deeper than steel. Night wrapped the sea in numbing wind. Manderly's flagship, Lady Leona, bore Robert's shrouded body in makeshift chapel of sailcloth lit by whale oil lamps. Selmy knelt vigil. Ned stood at prow, cloak flapping, leg wound bandaged though throbbing. Every breath tasted of ash. They sailed north now, not south. King's Landing lost this day, the throne contested by Lion and Fiery Heart both. Behind them the river blazed green well past midnight, an eerie aurora marking where truth had burned brighter than any crown. Ned touched pouch containing letters to his children, untouched by blood, though his own dried upon the parchment. "I am coming home," he whispered to dark water, "and when I do, winter itself will kneel." Far offshore, another fleet unfurled crimson sails stitched with a lion rampant, as yet unseen by Manderly lookouts. Aboard, Cersei Lannister stood at bow, wolf pommel dagger in hand, eyes fixed on northern horizon. She felt the pull, stronger than tide, guiding her vengeance home. At Winterfell that same hour, Bran Stark woke from dream of ravens whose feathers bled wildfire sparks onto snow. He clutched bedsheets, heart racing. Hodder slept in straw mattress nearby, oblivious. Outside, direwolves howled, low, uncertain. Bran swung legs from bed, felt cold floor beneath feet that only in dreams now walked unaided. He whispered to the darkness, "Something's broken." The castle answered with silence, but whined through window carried distant echo, as if the old gods themselves murmured agreement. In King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister limped through corridors choked with refugees, mind reeling at cost. Victory perhaps, but one purchased with a kingdom's lifeblood. He wondered if any throne could bear weight of so much ruin before collapsing beneath those who sought to sit upon it. And upon a blazing hill of corpses where 3 armies had met, Melisandre knelt beside a cracked warhammer left in mud, the weapon Robert lost when lifted to skiff. She touched haft slick with king's blood, closing her eyes. "One king dead," she whispered into smoke. The night grows weaker. Across valley, lightning flickered green one last time, illuminating Stannis Baratheon's silhouette as he watched both lion and wolf vanish into darkness he could not yet pierce. The war for Westeros had entered a new season. No longer a clash of banners, but a reckoning forged in wildfire's crucible and tempered by northern snow. Kings lay dead, queens in exile, honor bleeding yet unbroken. The realm's night stretched onward, filled with the howl of wolves, the roar of lions, and the relentless drumbeat of a stag's fading heart. Each echo carving fresh chapters yet unwritten. In a saga born the moment Ned Stark dared expose a secret beneath Winterfell's ancient boughs. The sea that bore Ned Stark northward had long been called the Shivering Sea by sailors who feared its tempers. Yet on that first night after the battle it lay almost flat, a vast black mirror reflecting ragged starlight and the distant green glow still blooming above the Blackwater like some baleful aurora. Foam hissed only where Manderly galleys sliced the water. Otherwise the silence of exhaustion reigned. Sailcloth snapped now and again, and wounded men groaned below decks, but the clamor of war felt a lifetime distant. Shut behind the salt-streaked hulls like a bad dream a man tries not to recall for fear it follows him into waking. Ned stood at the prow until his leg throbbed so fiercely that spots danced in his vision. Selmy at last coaxed him toward the surgeon's lantern-lit nook near the mainmast, where poultices of pine tar and ground mustard smoked in iron pots. The surgeon, a hard-jawed Northman named Hother Melton, scowled at the torn mail and clotted leather. "Your lordship bleeds like any farmer and stubborn as one," he growled, sawing away boot and greave. The gashes deep, steel near scraped the bone. He packed the cut with mashed garlic and honey, stitched the lips shut with boar bristle needle, then bound the whole thigh in linen and boiled wool. "No saddle for weeks," he warned. "You ride sooner. You'll tear the work and lame yourself forever." Ned accepted the edict in silence, but the knot in his chest tightened. Immobility would slow any vengeance or rescue he must mount. He slept hours only to wake to nightmares. Lyanna's weeping statue, wildfire devouring Winterfell, Jaime's sword slipping beneath Robb's ribs, Jon dissolving into snow on a wall of black glass. Dawn came thin and wan. Low clouds bruised the horizon. When Ned eased onto deck, he found Ser Barristan still kneeling beside the shrouded form of Robert Baratheon. The king's hammer laid across folded arms as if a scepter in some grim coronation of death. Selmy's whisper barely carried above the creak of rigging. "He died seeking honor at the last, Lord Stark. That is more than many kings can boast. Yet he leaves a realm bled white," Ned answered, voice raw. "And his true heirs hunt each other before the beer grows cold." They stood without further words while a pale sun clawed free of cloud. Only then did Ned draw parchment from cloak and break the sigil of a direwolf. Ali Manderly's hand had penned it during the night, listing losses. 500 Northmen slain on the field, near as many drowned beneath wildfire, scores more missing in the flight. Worse still, ravens had come from White Harbor. Ironborn raiders sacked Tall Tree Vale, and Bear Island fought alone. Grim arithmetic carved another line across Ned's heart. He limped to the quarterdeck where Wyman Manderly's heir, Ser Wylis, conferred with pilots over charts. "We make for White Harbor," Ned said, though the young knight had anticipated as much. "From their ravens must fly to every bannerman. The north will march once more, but under my son's lead until I return." Wyllis bent the knee, promised swift currents and fresh wind. Ned turned, pain flaring, and stared aft where a dozen smaller skiffs bore wounded and coffins. Somewhere among them Robert's heavy frame already chilled. He wished the man peace at last, but feared ghosts lingered when debts remained unpaid. 2 days later a squall rose, savage and sudden, lashing the fleet with sleet that stung like hornet venom. Sails reefed, oars labored. One galley lost a mast and foundered before the others could throw lines. Crewmen hacked free tangled spars to keep the hull from rolling, but whitecaps swallowed the vessel, and 40 souls vanished in minutes. Ned braced on the forecastle rail, salt spray mottling his cloak, and felt helpless anger. Every life another coin war demanded. When the storm eased by midnight, they counted again. 2 skiffs strayed but were recovered, though 5 more wounded had perished of chill. The maester kept tally with iron stoicism. Ned bled inside for each name. On calmer seas he drafted letters, one to Robb, naming him Lord of Winterfell and Protector of the North until Ned's own return or death. One to Cailin telling of Robert's fall, warning of Cersei's fleet. Others to Karstark, Glover, Mormont, Flint, Tallheart, summoning men but also instructing them to guard their coasts, for krakens multiplied. He sealed each in black wax and gave them to ravens caged aft, to be released the moment they made harbor. Selmy asked what message he would send Jon Snow. Ned closed eyes. "None yet. The wall has woes enough. Best he not ride south too soon." Yet part of him yearned to see Jon's face, to share a truth locked behind promise. The wall felt worlds away. Beyond the fleet's stern, Cersei's crimson sails chased, but winter storms forced her into coves along Crackclaw Point. There she met a ragged courier bearing tidings from King's Landing. Joffrey crowned, Tyrells entrenched, Stannis beaten back across Burning Bridge yet gathering again at Rook's Rest. And, most astonishing, Jaime wounded though alive, nursed by maesters in Tywin's siege camp outside Riverrun. The courier's last scrap, though, chilled her more than the wind. The wolf escapes north with the false king's corpse. The realm murmurs that Stark killed Robert to seize power. Cersei crushed the parchment in fist. Let them murmur. Soon they'll scream. She summoned captains, ordered fleet to sail not for the Rock but for Fair Isle, where she would take on fresh men and new ballast of gold. We follow the wolf to his den, burn his ports, cut his ravens, drag him south in chains. The captains bowed. One murmured fear of northern seas this season. Cersei's eyes blazed. The sea fears lions. She retreated below decks to cradle the wolf-headed dagger, imagining its point sliding between Ned Stark's stern ribs while the North watched their honor bleed out. Tommen asked that night when they would see their grandsire. "Soon," Cersei lied, stroking his hair. Myrcella sat silent at slanted window, watching lighthouse fires wink across rocks. Joffrey, pacing, practiced acceptance speeches for Tywin's inevitable victory. No one mentioned Jaime's wound aloud, though all felt its shadow. When a lion bleeds, pride snarls. Back in the city, wildfire still hissed from buried seams along the Blackwater's embankment, belching pale smoke that smelled of rotten eggs. Tyrion limped through charred docks counting shattered hulls. The chain had held. Half the fleet lay wrecked against its bronze links, but Stannis still controlled the southern shore, and Tywin grappled outside Riverrun, unable to reinforce. Gold cloaks scoured streets for dissent yet found only fear and hunger. Grain from the Reach sat offshore while tariffs argued. Rats fetched high prices in flea-bottom cookshops. In the small council chamber, Queen Regent Cersei's chair remained ominously empty. Tyrion now sat in her place, though none decreed it. Littlefinger lounged opposite, counting coins owed for salvage rights. Pycelle's cough rattled rafters. Varys alone looked refreshed, as if war's tumult invigorated him. They debated how to frame Robert's death for broadsheets. Joffrey favored announcing Stark treason. Pycelle argued exposure of Stannis' source. Littlefinger suggested both, plus a levy on northern wool to fund relief. At twice last year's rate, naturally. Tyrion pinched brow. We can claim Stark fled north with the body for proper burial, leaving the realm bereft of a king. That undercuts treason but paints him weak. Varys hummed. Weak wolves rarely threaten lions, an image some might find reassuring. Consensus formed. Blame chaos, praise Joffrey's valiant rule, vilify sorcery. Broadsheets rolled that night. Tyrion wondered if any truth still lived beneath layers of printed lies. At White Harbor, Ned's battered fleet limped into snowy harbor mouth under gray mid-morning skies. Dockworkers raised a subdued cheer, more for survival than victory. Yet when Wyman Manderley, massive in ermine cloak, met Ned on the quay and saw Robert's shroud, he fell to one knee, tears coursing through whiskers. "7 spare us," he muttered. "The stag is fallen. The lion roars unchecked." Inside Newcastle's timber-pillared hall, they laid Robert beneath a satin cover embroidered with the crowned stag. Northmen filed past to pay respects. Men who had once fought Robert's armies during Greyjoy's rebellion yet honored him now as the king who gave them peace. Wyman ordered bells to toll across all 3 harbor septs. Fishermen halted nets. Even smugglers stood hats removed. The direwolf and the stag had long friendship. Its end felt like winter's first hard frost creeping into marrow. Ned met Wyman, Hother Ryswell, and Lord Locke in strategy session lasting till lanterns guttered. Ravens would fly, east to Skagos, west to Bear Isle, south to Barrowton, Oldcastle, even to the Crannogmen at Greywater if they might be found. Ned tasked Wyman to build more ships, cogs and longboats both, lest Cersei's fleet cut the sea lanes. He ordered grain stockpiled, smithies forging spears, ravens bred twice as fast. The North must stand alone if need be, he said, though he prayed allies remained. A fresh-forged litter prepared to carry Robert's body along the King's Road to Storm's End for proper Baratheon burial. But winter made roads treacherous, and Tyrell forces blockaded southern keeps. Ned considered sending him to Dragonstone, Stannis' seat once, yet politics tangled. At last they chose to entomb the king in Winterfell's crypts temporarily, a courtesy until the realm steadied. Some hissed sacrilege, but Ned insisted. He was my brother in arms and heart. The crypt will not mind another hero's rest. North of the neck, Robb Stark paced Winterfell's great hall while Maester Coleman read the Raven aloud. Robert slain, father wounded, host returning soon. The words slammed him like mace to chest. He dismissed the hall, retreated to the Godswood, and knelt at Heart Tree where red sap flowed like tears. Gray wind prowled nearby, sensing turmoil. Robb spoke aloud, voice cracking. "You made me lord too soon, father. Guide me." Leaves rustled as if answering, though wind lay still. He rose changed, fear tempered into iron. Calling council of lords and castellans, he announced new commands. Tall Hearts to hold Moat, Fens to reinforce White Knife crossings. Mormonts recalled from Deepwood to join Galbart Glover's defense against Ironborn, while Ser Roderick petitioned the king at White Harbor for ships. Some balked at leaving Deepwood. Robb bared teeth. "The Kraken cannot squeeze the bear. We strike from behind while they think us cornered." His certainty won them. Great John roared approval loud enough to rattle banners. That night Robb visited Bran in Maester's Tower to break news. Bran's eyes glistened, but he nodded. "Father will come. The ravens showed me." Robb ruffled hair, though guilt pricked. Little brother clung to dreams while war devoured youth. He kissed Rickon asleep and told Sansa, quietly, that King Robert was gone. Sansa wept, remembering jolly hunts and lemon cakes once promised in royal kitchens. She worried for Joffrey, for King's Landing. Robb's jaw tightened. He dared not speak what rumors claimed of Joff's cruelty. Letters arrived next dawn. One from Riverrun via Blackfish Courier. Edmure escaped. Riverrun holds though Tywin faints. Another from the twins. Walder Frey demands royal charter, naming him Lord Paramount of the Trident before he aids either side. Robb cursed. The twins' gates remained shut to lion and wolf alike, turning Riverlands into tangle. He wrote back stern but diplomatic. Frey neutrality would earn future favor. Betrayal would earn northern memory. He sealed with dark wax and hoped. On the wall, Jon Snow stood watch atop Eastwatch's Frostfang parapet, wind knifing through cloak, when a raven arrived bearing Ned's hastily scribbled note. King dead. North threatened. Fulfill your vows. Remember blood. Father. No details, yet enough to ignite dread. Jon clenched parchment until knuckles whitened. Sam sat huddled beside Brazier, reading over shoulder. I'm sorry, he whispered.
Jon exhaled fog.
Duty. But heart thundered. Robb alone? Bran still fragile. Arya wild. Sansa at risk if realm tore. That night Jon dreamt wolves howling in a weirwood grove while a shadow stag lay bleeding beneath roots. Days later Lord Commander Jeor Mormont received rumor that King Beyond the Wall Mance Rayder gathered giants near Frostfangs. If realm ward, wall stands lone, Mormont warned officers at council. Jon heard weight behind words. He would not be granted leave south. So he sharpened blades, drilled new recruits, and every dawn looked across windswept ice imagining a Blackwater he had never seen tinted green by devil's fire. Ghost began to vanish on hunts not returning till morning, muzzle reddened. Once he dropped a singed raven feather at Jon's boot. Omens layered on omens. Along the western shore, Asha Greyjoy sailed black wind into Deepwood's ruined fishing hamlet, laughing as Ironborn raised longhouses. Yet scouts soon reported Mormont axes approaching by land. She scowled. Women who fought like bears were no easy prey. Worse, Raven spoke of Stark ships leaving White Harbor. Balon's grand design to carve a kingdom of salt might unravel unless Thorly Merlin's raids kept North distracted. Asha dispatched swift longship to Old Wyke, urging father to strike Moat Cailin now while wolves and lions snarled elsewhere. Sea seldom waited. In Riverrun's shadow, Tywin considered news of Robert's death with a predator's calm. The wolf runs north, Kevin observed. We could march on Moat. Tywin shook head. Stark without king means Stannis still threat. Smash Riverland's first secure supply, then finish the north. He ordered ravens to King's Landing promising reinforcements soon. Yet even Tywin felt spine chill reading Cersei's latest letter. She sailed to claim Wolf King's head herself, and demanded Riverrun fall before she reached the neck. Tywin crumpled parchment. Daughters sometimes roared louder than fathers. He would not be shamed by his own blood. Jaime, bandaged but restless, insisted he re-enter field. Maesters protested. Tywin finally agreed if Jaime commanded only vanguard archers while wound healed. The Kingslayer accepted through clenched teeth. That night he stood on rampart edge, gazing north where smoke from minor skirmish drifted. He fingered fresh scar under ribs. Ned Stark owes me steel in kind, he murmured. Moonlight glinted off Regalia's edge. Vow forged. At Dragonstone, Stannis licked wounds and plotted. Rook's Rest offered harbor. He garrisoned it, rebuilt catapults. Melisandre declared Leech's ashes-proof gods favored him. One king dead, another false, Renly, felled by shadow. The third bastard lion cub soon toppled. Stannis studied charred remains of Robert's hammer retrieved from Blackwater mud. Melisandre claimed destiny lay inside, forging fire from Iron Brotherhood. Stannis only saw shattered haft, but kept it. What else remained of family? Davos returned with smuggled news. Northern Fleet arrived home. Cersei sails after. If lion and wolf kill each other, your grace may claim throne uncontested. Stannis drummed fingers. Or the realm drowns while I watch. I must strike soon. He dispatched overtures to Dorne, promising justice for Elia, to pirates of stepstones, promising coin, and even to Braavosi bankers who liked coin more than kings.
Varchestre filt, Cruz drilt.
Melisandre climbed Dragonmont Caldera at midnight, spilling blood of white goat into fissure, chanting prayers in secret tongue. Somewhere below, magma pulsed brighter. She smiled. Fire awakens beneath stone, as above so below. Back at White Harbor, Ned prepared to ride for Winterfell despite surgeons' warnings. A covered wain lined with wolf pelts would bear him north slowly. Before departure he convened Wyman, Manderley captains, and Ser Donella Hornwood. Over salted cod and dark ale they crafted pledge. White Harbor's fleet to patrol narrow sea. Levy of 2,000 men to sail up the White Knife for Moat relief. Grain tithe doubled to feed northern musters. Ned thanked them, though eyes haunted. Too many promises weighed on shoulders still bleeding. He visited Robert's bier one last time. Alone, he knelt, pressed palm to cold satin. "I failed you at the end," he whispered, "but your realm shall not fall to ruin if I can stand." He left small token, a bundle of winter roses plucked from Godswood hothouse, frost clinging. Then he limped out to courtyard where retinue waited. Selmy, Corrin Halfhand newly arrived from Shadow Tower bearing tidings of wildling unrest, and Hallis Malin with guards. Snowflakes drifted as they set out through city gates to cheers of small folk. The high roads north glittered treacherous. Wolves howled nights. Bandits prowled day. They skirted lonely hills, past Flint's Finger where a watchtower's beacon warned of raiders. At dusk Selmy pointed to smoke on horizon. Another hamlet sacked by Ironborn perhaps. Ned's wound throbbed, but he refused litter rest. One evening they found crannogmen at Bogside Fire. Small, reed-armored hunters bowed low, presented basket of frogs and message from Howland Reed. The neck stands ready. Secret stir in barrow mists. Ned's friendship remembered. Ned clasped the elder's shoulder, heart warming at loyalty seldom seen south. Days became weeks. Snow deepened. Wain wheels groaned in drifts. Yet Winterfell's towers finally appeared, gray against white horizon. Horns welcomed. Gates yawned. Robb met them in armor burnished by new responsibilities. Father and son embraced. Ned nearly collapsed as wounds split anew, but pride held him. He sensed change in Robb. Boy tempered into steel, though edges still raw. They spoke briefly. Ironborn raids beaten back at Deepwood by Mormonts. Freys still dithering. Riverlands aflame. "You've done well," Ned said. Robb's eyes shone at praise he craved. That night a feast of return filled hall with venison stew and root vegetables. Meager fare yet hearty. Bran asked endless questions. Arya, taller now, begged sword lessons. Rickon climbed onto lap demanding stories. Sansa sang soft dirge for dead king. Hall fell silent then, tears glistening in torchlight. Ned thanked her, heart aching. Later, alone in Solar, he opened chest containing Robert's hammered crown. Hother Melton had salvaged it from baggage train. Gold antlers gleamed. Ned traced edges. "Who now bears this?" he asked the cold air. Answer hid beyond storm clouds. Across snow-swept wilds, Cersei's fleet plowed north but storms harried them, forcing shelter in Finger Isles where local lords denied mooring. Bribery opened one port, yet scurvy already nipped crew. Myrcella fell ill with fever. Tommen wept each dusk. Joffrey's tantrums worsened. He struck sailors for slowness until Cersei slapped him harder. "A king rules by fear," he hissed. "No," she corrected. "A king survives by fear. He rules by ruthlessness." Yet she worried, the boy scarce more than beast cut loose. Near Seal Bay a sudden gale shattered 2 cogs, cost 40 men and half their fresh water. Cersei ordered course for Sisterton to resupply, but Vale men blockaded harbor for Stannis. Mutiny whispered. She quelled by sacrificing 3 conspirators to Hungry Sea. Even that failed to steady morale. Northern seas bred demons old as snow. Still she pressed, vowing to reach Moat Cailin by thaw and march on Winterfell. Within Winterfell, Maesters purged Ned's wound anew, applied medicinal snow poultice to draw heat. Days he passed in council, nights pacing ramparts despite pain, surveying star-wheeled skies, thinking of threats. Tywin may swing west, Stannis south, Cersei already sailing, Ironborn striking. North held strength but lacked coin and horse. Raven from White Harbor reported Braavosi banker emissaries seeking trade. They might loan, but interest steep. Ned grimaced. Better honest poverty than bondage to usurers. Yet he knew armies marched on silver. One crisp dawn he called Robb, Theon Greyjoy, Meege Mormont, Roose Bolton, Galbart Glover. "We must strike first," he said. "If Tywin breaks Riverlords, he joins Cersei. If Ironborn choke coasts, we starve. If Stannis seizes capital, he may view North as traitor. Thus we move on Moat, cut the neck closed, then sail west against Pike to still Kraken. Roose's pale eyes gleamed. An audacious front, my lord, he murmured. Theon stood taller, chance to prove loyalty. Strategies carved into wax tablets. Ravens flew again. Ned also penned letter south to Stannis, pledging recognition if he swore to punish Cersei and defend North's borders. He wrote one to Doran Martell offering alliance. Justice for Elia for peace along Dornish marches. Diplomacy as crucial as swords. Yet he added final note to Tywin. Proposed prisoner exchange, Edmure for lion hostages. Great John called it folly to parley with lion. Ned replied, sometimes a prudent risk saves 5,000 lives. Great John drank and barked agreement. Night fell. Ned visited crypts. Torches flickered over faces carved of cold stone. Ricard, Brandon, Lyanna. Now Robert resting in cedar coffin draped stag banner. Ned knelt, whispered of burdens and regrets. As he rose, soft footfalls behind, Cailin, returned from Riverrun by fast horse, cheeks wind-burnt. They embraced. Grief, relief, desperate love. She told of Hoster near death but proud. Of Edmure safe though reckless. Riverrun holds yet. He shared news of war. They stood hand in hand before Lyanna's statue until torches died. That same hour, deep inside his tower chamber, Bran dreamed again. Not of ravens this time, but of man of snow with black crown of ice, eyes bluer than winter sky, standing beyond shattered wall while armies of silent dead marched south. He woke screaming, and Maester Coleman dosed milk of the poppy. Bran whispered as lids drooped, "Tell father, the true war comes." Coleman assumed fever dream, yet whined outside wailed like wolves mourning. Eastwatch sent Raven reporting giant tracks larger than ox carts seen near Milkwater. Another from Shadow Tower claimed ghostly horns echoed at dusk. Jon read each in silent dread. Lord Commander prepared great ranging, 500 men to ride beyond fist of first men come spring. Jon volunteered. Mormont clasped shoulder. Realm bleeds south, but we guard the dawn. You will ride. Jon felt both pride and dread. A part of him yearned to rush to Robb, but vows bound him. That night he stood atop icy Merlin watching curtains of green and purple lights ripple far north. Ghost howled, and from distant forest came answer not holy wolf. In Pentos, Prince Oberyn Martell feasted with Magister Illyrio, trading venomous jokes about Lannister arrogance. Over sweetmeats he learned of Targaryen girl across narrow sea who hatched dragons in red wastes. Oberyn's eyes glittered. Fire will melt lion's mane. He sent secret envoy to Meereen, offering Dornish spears if the Dragon Queen ever sailed west. He planned to ride for Sunspear soon, but first he toasted to chaos, wine red as vengeance. The moons turned while raven wings beat frantic. Cersei's fleet at last neared harbor of Flint's Finger where Frey mercenaries opened gates. But winter storms hammered coast, driving half ships onto rocks. Cersei rode inland with tattered host, burning crofts, hanging resistors, commandeering food. Word raced to Winterfell. Lioness stalks the Bar Rollins. Ned gathered riders. Surgeon protested. He donned mail anyway, leg aching but knit. Robb would lead main host to Moat. Ned would ride light force south to harry Cersei, delay until Great John marched. Catelyn kissed his brow, fear bright yet proud. Before dawn the northern riders thundered past Wintertown under banners of direwolf and flayed man, Roose insisted. Snow fell thick, cloaking hoofbeats. Ned led, Selmy at side, Theon eager, Bolton's men silent. Somewhere beyond Barrowton, Cersei's scouts would taste wolf winter. Thus the game twisted. A dead king in crypt beneath winter roses, a boy king in City of Lies, a shadow king forging fire on Dragonstone, a wolf lord cradling North's fate, a lioness driven by rage across frostbitten moors, krakens gnawing coasts, dragons awakening far away, and in the far north ice gods stirring. And amid them all Eddard Stark rode again, wounded but unbroken, his honor now tempered with the steel of hard necessity. He carried only 3 truths: that winter was no longer coming but here, that wolves must hunt together or vanish, and that somewhere beyond horizon his children's future awaited the choices he would make in days to come, choices wrought not by the swords of old friends or old foes, but by the fire in his heart that refused to let the realm he loved drown in lion's roar and stag's silence. The road stretched white before him, and with each hoofbeat the storm grew nearer, howling its own song of fate. Snow powdered the desolation north of Barrowton in fine, glittering crystals that tossed back the dawn like shards of a shattered mirror. It was too soft to crunch beneath hooves, too fresh even to squeak. Instead, each step of the column exhaled a low husk that merged with the distant moan of wind until the entire host seemed to breathe as one beast tunneling through winter's lungs. Ned Stark rode at the fore in a high-backed saddle lashed to his padded litter's frame, Surgeon Melton's compromise between bedrest and madness. For rangy geldings pulled the contrivance, their tack muffled in rawhide so the constant jolt of harness rings would not betray the Kingslayer's refugees now turned hunters. The arrangement kept pressure off Ned's wounded thigh but left him exposed to icy gusts that found every seam of his cloak. He accepted the bite without complaint. Pain meant he was not dreaming. Beside him cantered Ser Barristan Selmy on a dappled courser whose mane flicked snowflakes like sparks from an anvil. The old knight had refused warmer furs, saying the Kingsguard wore only white. That vow mattered more than age-weakened bones. He carried Robert's warhammer slung across the pommel in a canvas sleeve stitched with the crowned stag. The weight had nearly torn the sleeve twice, despite Selmy's constant stitchwork at campfires. Ned suspected the hammer itself grieved, yearning for its master's grip as much as Selmy yearned for a king who would never ride again. Roose Bolton rode a black palfrey 1 horse length behind, his cloak a pallid ripple almost the hue of new frost save for the flayed man's sigil at collar. The paleness suited him. Even his voice floated half-audible above the wind, a thing of cold ponds and creeping fog. Nearer the rear loped Theon Greyjoy with a dozen picked reavers from the stony shore, men as restless as gulls on a storm wake, proud of fresh kraken tattoos inked upon forearms in defiance of their distant kin. They had volunteered to cut Cersei's supply wagons before she reached the neck. Theon took their eagerness as proof of loyalty. Bolton took it as proof they were iron-born still, drawn to the scent of plunder. Ned took no stance yet. Winter would judge. 500 riders in all, Mormont axewives clad in patchworked bear hides, tall umbers in antlered helms, wiry crannogmen astride shaggy bog ponies, and a scattering of northern gentry whose small keeps dotted the bar rollins like half-buried grave markers. Behind rode a baggage train of sleighs, each plank groaning beneath salted pork, dried river trout, and fur barrels of lamp oil. In other wars Ned might have traveled leaner, but here he dared not trust villages already gnawed by war and winter famine. Rumor insisted Cersei had ordered her men to torch any hamlet that offered succor to wolf banners. If so, the land itself would soon become an enemy. On the 4th morning, scouts returned with news. Lion outriders 8 leagues south, skirting the Umbra Hills along a frozen riverbed. They numbered fewer than 200, but their banners, crimson silk frayed by wind, proved Cersei's column lay close behind. Ned ordered the army to break in 2 talons. Bolton would circle east with the quickest riders and bogmen, shadow the queen from flank and rear, harry her baggage, steal her warmth. Ned, Selmy, and the main force would press straight ahead, seize the stone bridge at Greyblade Ford before the lions reached it. Destroying the bridge would strand them on barren moors where supplies thinned with every sunrise. Bolton bowed with a smile that never touched his eyes. At dusk he melted into blowing snow, his coterie of silent riders following like ghosts. The moon chose not to rise. Starlight alone revealed their passing, glints on iron rivets that winked once, then vanished. The stone bridge loomed at the heart of a low valley, an ancient span of giant-hewn blocks mottled green and gray beneath rime. Legend said the first men had raised it long before the Starks shaped kingdoms from ice. Maester Luwin once wrote that the stones still hummed at night, singing of some forgotten craft. Ned found only silence when he arrived at sunrise on the 5th day, save for the chuckle of water too stubborn to freeze. The river itself, called the Needle by local farmers, wound narrow between slate banks, yet winter's melt higher upstream could swell it to a roaring throat. Break the bridge, and spring floods would bar passage for moons. 70 Mormont women carried saw-toothed axes to the bridge supports while Stark masons drilled slots for wedges of lamp oil-soaked wood. Others unpacked sealed clay jars gifted by White Harbor alchemists. Wildfire of the cruder sort, unstable in cold, but potent if coaxed by flame. Theon's reavers muttered dark approval. Ned posted archers at each river bend and watched daylight scrape across stones the color of ashes until smoke on the southern horizon announced lion approach. Cersei's outriders appeared at noon. A splay fan of crimson cloaks, chain gleaming, swords drawn though there were yet no enemies to fight. They halted on a ridge, surveying the valley below now bristling with Stark banners. Gray on white above the drifting snow. One rider unfurled a gold-edged flag of parley. Ned limped halfway across the bridge to meet them. Selmy paced him, warhammer slung but unsheathed. The parley envoy removed helm, revealing Tyreek Lannister, a cousin scarcely older than Joffrey. His cheeks were raw with windburn and fear. He announced Queen Regent Cersei of House Lannister demanded free passage through Stark lands by lawful right of royal levy to pursue traitors. She would brook no interference and offered clemency to those who withdrew. Ned answered with a single sentence. "Tell your queen the North remembers." Tyreek swallowed, eyes flicking to the half-frozen river, to the glimmers of green weeping from cracks where wildfire seeped. He turned without another word, retreating to his lines. "Was that wise, my lord?" Selmy asked quietly. "Perhaps not," Ned confessed. "But wolves do not yield den to lion." He signaled masons. Axes rang, wedges hammered, torches leapt to life. The first detonation boomed like thunder rolling inside stone. Pillars cracked. Ice spat shards into the air. A parabola of molten crimson swooshed skyward, then collapsed in hiss and sizzle, showering sparks that died before touching snow. The second blast tore the bridge's bow arch clean away. Blocks centuries seeded tumbled, smashing through skeletal ice into churning black. When the smoke drifted clear, half the span lay broken, its midsection gone, and rushing water surged around stumps like wolves worrying at bones. Stark archers loosed fletched shafts tipped in oily rags. Each struck remaining bundles, and green flame blossomed along mortar seams. The stone bridge screamed, the sound of masonry rending under weight of history, and collapsed. Cersei's outriders wheeled in panic. A cheer rose from Northman throats, but Ned grimaced. Breaking roads always risked isolating the breaker. "Back to positions," he ordered. "Her Grace will not retreat so easily." He was right. By late afternoon, Cersei's full force crested the ridge. 1,000 knights in enameled plate, 3 times as many foot, and a baggage line long enough to coil round the hill's far flank. At their center rode the queen herself on a white destrier draped in gold cloth of Myr. Snow spattered the velvet but could not mute its shine. She wore armor too, segmented gilded plates sprouting a mane of saw-toothed steel, neither practical nor comfortable but fierce in aspect. A wolf-headed dagger glinted at her hip. She halted within bowshot but made no move to parley. Trumpets brayed, shield lines redressed, catapults rolled forward, hacked together from pillaged trees. A squire lit their braziers with pitch. Ned counted 3 engines. Enough to hurl debris across the river, perhaps to build a crude causeway. Not today, he thought. He dispatched Theon's reavers across a marshy bend 2 leagues west where the Needle forked into smaller streams. "Put those longships on sled runners to use," he said. "If they try a ford, gut the pontoons." Theon grinned, hungry. Roos's harriers had not yet returned. Their absence could spell either triumph or ambush. Time would tell. As sun touched treetops, the first engine loosed. A bundle of timbers bound in iron, trailing chains. It splashed short of the main channel. 2 more followed, inching nearer, each landing with bone-deep booms that peppered Mormont ranks with shards. Archers answered, felling sappers, but the engines creaked on.
Ned signaled Selmy.
The old knight hefted Robert's hammer once more, removed its canvas sleeve, and glanced skyward as if approaching storms might grant a dead king's blessing. Then he spurred across the churned snow, 24 heavy cavalry at heel, racing along the bank to flank the catapults before they found useful range. Lannister infantry saw too late. Selmy's white cloak streamed behind like a comet's tail. His war cry, "For the true king!" split gathering dusk. The hammer fell, and every blow sang of storm's end, of trident, of ghosts who would not rest. Watching, Ned felt the old ache of years spent fighting for Robert. A part of him wanted to ride shoulder to shoulder still, but age and wound chained him to command. He turned attention to enemy center, where Cersei's armor glinted crimson in torchlight. She had drawn her blade, a thin rapier, its guard wrought in lion's curls, and pointed toward collapsed bridge as if commanding water itself to part. Up went another catapult shot, overshooting to crash amidst Stark hinterline supply. Smoke coiled, and Ned cursed. Repositioning. Bolton chose that moment to appear. A ragged roar beyond Lannister flank, then shapes melting from gloom. Leather masked, flayed man banners snapping, horses gaunt but swift. They fell upon the baggage wagons like blades of winter wind, slaughtering guards, setting torches to hay wains. White-robed priests screamed as kegs of Lannisport red burst in flame. Cersei wheeled, barking orders. Half her cavalry peeled off to salvage stores, but Bolton vanished again, slipping away with plunder and captives alike. Ned watched troubled. Bolton's cruelty matched prowess, and wolves could ill afford enemies inside their own house. Night rushed down fast. Howling wind carried sparks from burning wagons into the starless dark. Neither side desired full assault blind, yet skirmishes flickered all along the bank like foxfires. Each clash a burst of steel against steel, then retreat. Cersei pulled her catapults safe behind a ring of shields. Ned withdrew archers to embankments cut for winter, where they could rest and resupply. Snow thickened. Campfires hissed under makeshift awnings of shield and cloak. Ned convened council in a hollow behind a tumble of boulders. Crude windbreak. Theon arrived spattered with mud and blood. They had burned 3 pontoon rafts hidden upriver, slain 20 engineers, lost 8 men. Bolton's captain presented loot. Casks of salt pork, bolts of Lannisport silk, 3 prisoner knights, and a courier pouch sealed with lion wax. Inside, Ned found campaign orders penned by Kevin Lannister, detailing rendezvous at the Twins in 3 weeks, expecting Frey neutrality broken in lion favor. "So Walder truly leans south," Theon muttered. Ned's stomach tightened. The North could not fight on neck front while guarding river crossing at Frey betrayal. Their options narrowed. Hold river, starve Cersei, hope Frey treachery delayed or repelled, or strike lion host swift, break their queen's will, then we'll east to secure Twins before southern reinforcements. Attack risked heavy losses. Stalemate risked greater, for winter would not delay. Selmy spoke, voice low. "A queen in armor is still a queen. Capture her. End war's western head." Theon nodded, eager. Bolton's smile thin as ice. Ned gazed at parchment again, thought of Robb marching on Moat, of Ironborn raiding, of Stannis forging storms. He felt the ancient stone of the bridge rumble still in memory. "At dawn," he said. "We cross by stealth where the needle forks. Archers create noise on the bank here." He tapped map. "Bolton sweeps wagon remnants to draw her guards. Theon strikes catapults with rafts of pitch. Selmy and I lead barracks and umber fists direct to Queen's banner. Take her alive if we can, dead if not." Bolton's voice silky. "And her children?" "They are not here," Ned replied. "And they are children." Bolton inclined head, unsmiling. Theon frowned but held tongue. Orders settled, they dispersed. Ned remained, staring into flames until only embers glowed like far-off, dying stars. Cersei did not sleep. Beneath snow-weighted pavilion she paced floorboards strewn with maps, each edge tacked by jeweled knives. Her maester begged rest. She dismissed him with a flick of fingers gloved in gold. Jaime's memory gnawed, wounded by Stark steel, stolen. She imagined his laugh when he learned she stumbled on riverbank like traveler lost. Rage fused with fear into brittle resolve. She would break these wolves, mount their pelts upon iron throne, Send Ned Stark's head to King's Landing pickled in brine. She fingered the wolf pommel dagger, felt its keen promise. At midnight she summoned Ser Balon Swan. Ride for the twins at dawn, she ordered, handing Kevin's duplicate orders amended. Walder Frey named Lord Paramount of Riverlands upon swift fealty and assistance. Balon, ever dutiful, bowed. She almost envied his simple honor. When he left, she stood alone listening to snow patter canvas like distant applause and whispered to the dark, "Remember me, Jaime." When they kneel, dawn came thin and pale, horizon washed bone white. Ned's strike column gathered east of camp, where the needle split into 3 rivulets crusted in ice thick enough to bear horse weight if crossed single file. Crannogmen led, testing each step with willow spears. Behind moved 200 axes of Bear Isle, their breath pluming like war smoke. Beyond them Gretchen's chosen spearmen, bare arms smeared with lard against frost. Then Ned and Selmy with 30 mounted swords, warhammers slung beneath elk hide. Bolton slipped northeast with half his riders, unseen. At the catapults, Theon's reavers lashed rawhide sledges laden with oil jars and pitchbrush. At Ned's hand signal they glided out of hollow, torches smothered but ready. In the main encampment archers began a ragged barrage into nothingness, noise and fury to mask approach. Crannog whistle chirped, ford secure. Bears crossed first, axes muffled in leather. Ice groaned but held. Ned followed last, feeling water swirl under frozen lid as if aware of trespass. They climbed southern bank beneath skeletal pines just as first alarm horn blew from Lannister lines. Too late. Mormont axes cut through drowsy sentries like wolves through yews. Tents collapsed in sprays of feathers. One bear woman hefted great axe to sever catapult arm before crew could load. Pitch ignited, whooshing into new dawn. Theon's sledges slid among supply fires, scattering flaming brooms. Soon a wall of heat blossomed, and barrels of lamp oil exploded in geysers. Cersei emerged atop rise, sword bare, shouting to rally knights. Selmy spurred toward her banner, Ned riding flanking arc, legs screaming but heart iron. Shields clashed. Selmy's hammer knocked aside a knight's mace, crushed man's gorget to jelly, pressed forward. Cersei's guard closed, but they expected a knight-errant, not the living legend of Kingsguard. 2 fell. Third parried, then caught hammer's spike in visor, tumbling. Ned met Ser Lancel Lannister, golden hair drenched in frost sweat, mid-charge. He deflected spear, repaid with blade across pauldron, unseating the boy though sparing his life. Wolves surged, umbers roaring north. For a heartbeat Ned glimpsed Cersei no more than 10 yards away, face a mask of frozen fury, blade angled to intercept Selmy. He leaned, urged horse. Arrow whined past ear, thudded into his cuirass with force that stole breath. Brute impact hurled him backward from saddle onto snow. Stars burst behind eyes. Pain cascaded from ribs. He gasped, reached for sword, gone. Shapes blurred above. A Lannister footman raised Morningstar, spike glistening. Ned rolled, felt thigh wound scream, rolled again. Spike slammed earth, missed by hair. Morningstar lifted, but Bear Isle axe sheared footman's torso. He fell away. Ned's savior, Lyra Mormont, face-streaked grime, hauled him upward. "You still breathing, Lord?" He nodded, dizzy. She thrust blade into his hand. "Keep." He staggered toward Queen's standard. Flames roared behind Theon's work. Selmy and Cersei circled amidst chaos, her rapier flicking at hammer's haft, sparks shedding where she struck with uncanny precision. Beside them Robert's banner fell, trampled. Ned shouted, but lungs rattled. From the ridge thundered fresh cavalry, Lannister reinforcements answering horns. Their charge crashed into Umber's flank, shattering formation. Bolton's delay cost them. Cersei saw opening, lunged, rapier sliding inside Selmy's guard to pierce upper arm. White cloak reddened. Selmy stumbled. Hammer dropped. Cersei drove tip again, aiming for throat. Ned hurled himself forward, blade sweeping long. Rapier diverted to parry. Clang jarred bones. Cersei's eyes met his overlocked steel, green wildfire burning. "Stark!" she hissed, breath fogging between clenched teeth. "Queen Regent!" he rasped back. He pressed. She pivoted, footwork deft, slashing for stomach. Armor turned aside, but impact stung. Then all strategy disintegrated. New roar erupted. Bolton's riders surged from smoke into Lannister rear, flayed banners whipping crimson sparks. Panic rippled. Ned used moment, battering Cersei's guard, step by step. She backpedaled to ridge edge where wind whipped cloak. Below the ruined bridge lay gap, water now crusted thin with ice. One misstep meant plummet. "Yield," he demanded. She spat blood-tinged spittle. "I am the lioness. Lions do not kneel." He advanced, then arrow hummed past, grazed his helm. In distraction, Cersei slashed low, biting his wounded leg. Agony blinded, he fell to one knee. She raised rapier for finishing thrust, but a black-fletched bolt sprouted from her pauldron, spun her aside. Theon stood astride burning wagon, reloading crossbow, face alight with feral glee. Cersei staggered, blood soaking gold. She looked down bewildered, then across at Ned. Fury twisted into something darker. Despair, perhaps. She dropped rapier, reached for wolf pommel dagger instead, clutching it like promise. Umbers closed, but she backed to cliff of fractured masonry. Eyes wild. Wind howled, tugging hair loose. "End me and become kinslayer," she taunted. "My sons yet live to hunt you." Ned limped forward, sword mere inches from her throat. "Enough blood," he whispered. "Yield and live for them." She smiled, a crack in ice. "Better to die a lion than live a leash." She stepped back into nothing. For an instant gravity held breath. Gold-armored queen hung between sky and Blackwater. Then she fell, cloak fluttering like broken pennant. Ice below shattered with dull crack. River swallowed her whole. "Seven save us?" Selmy breathed, clutching bleeding arm. Ned stared over edge, heart pounding. Current swirled, chunks of ice tumbling. No golden glimmer surfaced. Only the wolf pommel dagger remained upon lip of stone, its blade stained red. He bent, snatched it, a trophy he never desired. Battle ebbed with Queen's fall. Lannister troops wavered. Many fled toward distant hills. Some cast down weapons, kneeling in drift. Bolton's riders harried briefly, then drew back at Ned's horn command. Smoke from burning catapults mingled with falling snow until valley resembled vast cauldron of gray ash. Mormont axewives formed perimeter while maesters tended wounded. Selmy refused treatment until Ned's arrow-battered cuirass unbuckled. Ribs wrapped. Surgeon Melton muttered curses, but smile traced lips. Arrow bent on mail, flesh bruised not pierced. Leg slash reopened yet could heal. They counted dead, 150 Northmen, perhaps 400 lions. Bolton's losses unknown. His men scoured fields still. Queen Cersei Lannister presumed drowned, her body unrecovered. Ned summoned Theon and Bolton. Spread word to surrounding holds. The Queen Regent is gone, her host scattered. Any still willing to shed blood for Lion may depart south unmolested, leaving arms. Those who stay shall kneel to Robb Stark as Warden of North. Theon cheered. Bolton inclined, expression unreadable. Snow deepened, fires doused. Wolves emerged from tree line to worry at fallen. Bears dragged carcasses away. Night swallowed valley, but in Ned's soul a torch flared. One head of the Hydra severed, yet many remained. Tywin coiled at Riverrun, Joffrey crouched on throne, Stannis forging storms, Ironborn raiding, winter creeping. But for first time since Blackwater fiasco, hope stirred. The North had struck a blow to rattle even Casterly Rock. He stood at River's jagged edge, staring into darkness where Queen had vanished. Memory stirred. Brandon's face at rope's end, father's ashes swirling over King's Landing ramparts, lioness blood on petals. Always lions at root. Tonight one lioness chosen cold embrace over chain. He whispered old prayer to Weirwood unknown to southern ears. Let the dead find peace, the living find mercy. A snowflake landed on wolf pommel dagger, melting into droplet that slipped down blade crimson. He wiped it clean, slid weapon into belt. Proof for realm, symbol for children, and reminder every choice carries cost. At Winterfell, Bran woke with a jolt, tears on cheeks. He saw mother's face, father's blade, river of black glass. He heard wolves howl triumphant, yet sensed emptiness. He whispered to darkness, "The lioness falls," and drifted again, uneasy. On the wall, Jon watched aurora flare red over horizon. Wildfire's ghost, perhaps, though leagues distant. Ghost raised snout, keened a single note. Jon felt twin pang of sorrow and resolve but knew not why. In Riverrun's siege camps, a raven arrived at Tywin's pavilion bearing twisted scrap bearing Bolton's sigil. Queen dead. Withdraw or choke on Winter. Tywin read twice, face stone. Jaime, arms still bound, asked, "Is it father?" Tywin folded message. "Prepare to move. The game changes." Across the narrow sea in a windswept plaza of Meereen, Daenerys Targaryen soothed her youngest dragon as Sel's words chattered of Westerosi queen drowned in snow. She listened, eyes luminous, and murmured, "The lions weaken, the wolves rise, the dragon ascends." Flames danced in her reflection. 3 nights after the battle, Ned's host turned north for Winterfell, carrying prisoners and grim spoils. Robert's hammer rode across Selmy's lap. Cersei's dagger hung at Ned's hip. Bolton's men hauled wagons heavy with lion gold. The valley they left behind lay charred, bridgeless, haunted by crows whose feast would echo until thaw. But the north had reclaimed its breath, and Ned felt each step draw him closer to children, to home, to a war of winters yet to come. He penned fresh letters en route, to Robb victory, remain vigilant, to Stannis, queen dead, realm ripe for truce, to King's Landing, offer of peace if Joffrey abdicates to rightful heir, to Jon, hold the wall, for true darkness stirs beyond mortal wars. Whether ravens carried these hopes through storm he could not know. On the 10th evening they reached the barrow where ancient kings of first men slept. Ned ordered camp, then limped alone to its moss-covered mound. He planted torch, unsheathed dagger, and drove its wolf-headed pommel into frozen earth above Barrow Crest where it caught torchlight. "Rest here," he whispered, uncertain to whom he spoke. The queen now dust in river, or ancestors dreaming beneath, perhaps both. The blade gleamed one heartbeat, then wind snuffed flame, plunging mound into darkness. He turned back toward camp, toward Winterfell's distant hearthfires, and felt pain ease just a fraction. There remained Tywin's iron jaws, Stannis's burning zeal, Greyjoy's salted knives, Frey's shifting loyalties, dragons on far horizon, and the night itself, hungry, patient. But the North remembers. And so, with hammer and honor and a heart no longer willing to bend to any crown, Eddard Stark walked into the whirling snow, while somewhere deep in the darkness of the heart tree's dreams, red sap dripped like silent applause.